Folks, we are live. Submit to the High Council here on World Class Bullshitters. I'm your host, Jeff Hicks, and with me tonight is, as always, Tom from Midnight's Edge After Dark.
Hail, everybody. Hail, Phantom Menace. Welcome.
Indeed, hail the Phantom Menace. Also, would like to send a hail over to Mecha Random 42.
Hail. And thank you for including me week after week. I do really appreciate it.
Love having you, Mecha. And then finally, we are joined by a very special guest tonight. His resume is incredibly impressive. He has been involved with all sorts of projects across the board, from games to movies and all sorts of things in between, with projects like Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2 and a lot more. So, folks, you see his name on the screen. It's an honor to have him on the High Council for the very first time, Mr. Tom Conkle.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hail to the Phantom Menace. And I really am very appreciative of all the commentary, all the things that that you do that keep me informed as an artist here in LA. It's a really refreshing point of view, and it's sometimes my primary source of information.
Well, I always find it really interesting when we reach people that have worked in Hollywood or making movies or anything across the scale in terms of how you do it. It's really cool to see that, like, the content that we all create does reach, across the board. So it's always exciting to have someone, like I said, that's worked in the industry here on the show. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Now, folks, we're going to do something a little different here on the High Council, and moving forward, I want to introduce a little bit of structure to the show, segments, things like that to get people hooked, because the WCBS podcast is kicking ass across the board, and it's the most fun you can have legally on a Thursday night. Hell, maybe it's not all legal, but my point is, we want to bring that fun to the High Council. So we're going to be doing a couple things a little different moving forward, but we're playing around with the format, and we really want everyone's input. So if you guys have segments or ideas or things like that, you know how to contact us over on the Facebook page, over on Twitter, everywhere. So with that being said, I did want to make one announcement that's unusual for this. On Thursday, October starts, which means Schlocktoberfest, which is some of the horror-related stuff. So here on the channel, throughout the month, you'll get a sprinkling of some horror-related things, like, I don't know, a live reading of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, 40s radio style. So we have some really cool things that we're working on all throughout the month. So make sure you guys are subscribed, check us out across the board, and be here so you don't miss out on anything. So before we get into our segments tonight, Tom, but Midnight's Edge Tom, you've had the opportunity to have Tom on the show before. Tom, could you tell everyone, this is Tom, I gotta come up with a good way to, let's see.
You just call me Conkle.
Okay, you're Conkle, and Tom is Tom. So
you can just call me Thomas or whatever, too. It don't matter.
I'm going to stick with Conkle. I kind of like it. It's like people with their screen names and stuff.
Yeah. Whenever I would audition, somebody would say, you conkled the room. So I'll conkle the room.
What's even worse is our last names are so similar, too. It's like,
yeah. Conkle and Connors, we need to go on the road.
All right.
Or a law firm.
I was going to say, yeah, sounds like a law from Conkle and Connors.
That's right. The old vaudeville. I remember the old vaudeville days.
So anyway, what was your question, Jeff? I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to just say, Conkle, to the audience, could you introduce yourself, tell people some of the projects that you've been a part of? Because your list, like I said, is fairly extensive.
Oh, I've been really lucky. The way that I came out here is a tale that many people have. I remember as a kid, I went to go see Star Wars. I lived on the East Coast. And on the drive back, I remember I was sitting in my parents' big Mercury. I'm driving back from it, and I got really quiet. I was, as a kid. And they're like, "Hey, what's wrong? Didn't you like the movie?" And I said, "I'm leaving you. I'm moving to Los Angeles. I'm going to make movies." This is on the drive back from Star Wars. And my mom goes, "Well, I guess we're going to spend a lot of time in airports." So the day after I graduated, I packed my car. I drove across country in about 4 days. I didn't really have many contacts or anything. I basically lived in my car until I found an apartment. But I jumped in with both feet. I have a background both in front of and behind the camera. I studied drama as well as writing and production communications. And I really have a unique position. I've worked with some amazing people. Everyone from in my last feature film, I actually got to meet the guy the first celebrity I ever met in LA, which was Vernon Wells. I met him in a Circuit City store in Van Nuys. I think it was 22 years old. And I walk up to him, and, you know, this would have been, you know, just after Weird Science and all that stuff was going on, late 80s, early 90s. And I go, one day I'm going to make a movie with you. And he goes, yeah, right, kid. and so during Trouble Is My Business, you know, I'm sitting there in the chair and he's wailing on me in this scene. And I look up and I go, do you remember a little kid in Circuit City that said he's going to read? He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I told you you'd be here. And he's like, oh my God. So that's kind of my career. I'm fascinated by making genre films. I work as an actor, as a writer, as a director. I have worked with some amazing people. I did a show with John Cleese called The Art of Football, which showed before the World Cup. I have performed in tons of television shows and in guest star roles from Arrested Development, Community, all these different things. It's kind of the bread and butter. But my real passion is creating my own independent work, my own independent films. I have a new film that I'm starring in called Noise in the Middle, coming out, which is a Halloween release on the 29th. And I have a film out now, which has Vernon Wells in it, called Trouble Is My Business, which is a love letter to the film noir genre. I would say film noir, science fiction, action, adventure, comedy, those kinds of genres are my favorite to play in. Oh, here we have a trailer. If you'd like to see the trailer to Trouble Is My Business with Vernon Wells, we can cue that up.
Let's check it out.
Yeah. It has sound. It's not a silent film.
Did I boomer the sound?
It's like The Artist.
No, it should have sound. There we go. Okay.
Just turn it up on YouTube, Tom.
I probably got it turned way down. Yeah. Yep, I do. Let me back that up just a second. There we go.
We're closed.
Roland Drake.
Possibly.
All the heroes fall. World plays its wicked games. I'm not left defenseless, 'cause I know
You eventually will beg me to throw you off this roof.
the sky's gonna say my name.
I can't tell you where the diamond is.
All the heroes fall.
I loved you.
World plays its wicked games. I'm not left defenseless, 'cause I know the sky's gonna say my name. The sky's gonna say my name. The sky's gonna say my name. Sky's gonna say my name.
That's a little
Wow.
taste.
Awesome.
Definitely a love letter to film noir with roots going all the way back to Out of the Past, you know, the Jacques Tournier film, and certainly Maltese Falcon. But I wanted to play in that milieu because the reason they made film noir that way is studios didn't have a lot of money back then, and they used to shoot lean. And if they didn't have to light the walls, well, then suddenly you've got a real moody piece because you don't have to light everything like an MGM musical. So I thought, how do I apply that aesthetic to low budget indie? And it turned out that it was very similar in aesthetic. I like the attitude of film noir because that's kind of the attitude of it. Everyone has a friend who's heading for the wall and going to hit the wall, and you're like, don't do it. Boom, they hit the wall. That's film noir. And I had a lot of fun doing that. I've directed a couple of TV shows, a couple of other films for other people, but I really gave myself permission to start making my own films about 6 or 7 years ago with my company Luminactus. The next thing I have coming out is Noise in the Middle, which, if you want to watch that, the trailer dropped on Joe Blow yesterday, and we can take a look at that. It's a lot of fun as well. Look for my cameo here. I'm starring.
Come on. Autism's a communication disorder. When you communicate, you have a sender and a receiver.
There will be a low clicking sound.
Everything in between is lost.
This must seem like a dream at times, eh? Raising a girl without her mother can be incredibly hard.
I know. I miss her too. This machine helps us sort out all the noise in the middle so we can hear Emmy. Have you tried the app with her yet?
Dad.
She only likes her pictures.
Let her take as many pictures as you can.
Dad. Dad.
She's always trying to say something.
Did you do this? Did you kill the cat? What are you looking at? How do you know if someone from the other side is trying to talk to you? She's an indigo, which means she's a conduit for spirits. Emmy? I think that you're sitting on a ton of paranormal energy. Emmy?
Emmy.
There we go. Kind of creepy.
Are you okay? Look at me.
So yeah, that's coming out on the 29th.
Ooh.
And we had a lot of fun. My collaborator on that was Marcus McCullum, who I met doing commercials.
Yeah,
I did a commercial actually that ended up being this really strange viral meme called Raisin Brahms, where I play Brahms and I crash through this wall looking like Brahms, and I'm like, Guten Tag! And it looks like a breakfast commercial, but it's actually to raise money for the arts. But people started making memes, and I think my head ended up being The Rock chasing Indiana Jones. There's people have like looped it like where I'm going Guten Tag for like an hour. So that Marcus and I hit it off, and we did this thing called Baxter Smalls. He's a time traveling documentary filmmaker, and he would go back in time and interfere with whatever he is. So he'd visit Vikings and be like, "Pay no attention to me. Just keep doing what you're doing," and like ruin every documentary about people that he makes. So we worked on this thing. It should be a lot of fun. John Meese is in that. Tara Buck from True Blood, and myself and Juliet Jeffers and Jim Holmes are in it. And it's a fun movie. We shot it up in the Northwest in Spokane.
Well, the horror trailer is getting really good reaction in the chat for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
it looks awesome too, but like they're really reacting to that. So it looks like I thought it was really cool looking. So.
Thank you. I'm really proud of it. I hope it does well. Hopefully it'll land when people are in the mood to watch something around Halloween.
Now that I've stumbled over myself 20 times over, that's your newer stuff. But as we just started talking to you a little bit ago, your journey started back in '77, and you've done a lot since then. You did touch on a few things, but I know, Jeff, you wanted to talk about a few things specifically. I think one of them's on on the screen right now.
Yes. So Matt G sent in a super chat that says, "What is the earliest example of anime?" So on your IMDb, you're credited with stuff like Macross Plus, Street Fighter 2, the animated movie.
Yes.
I think I saw Trigun.
Yeah, Hanamaze too. There's a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
So so you come out to Hollywood, or come out to LA. You have your goals. How do you find yourself in anime voice acting? Because in the spheres of late, we've seen a lot of concern from anime fans as you bring stuff over. There's a lot of changing, a lot of censorship, a lot of different sensibilities across the board. What was it like early on when you're doing voice acting for some of these things when anime is not what it is today? How is it? What is the attitude that anime is treated with back then?
You know what? That's a really interesting question, and I've never been asked that before. I like that question. I got into it. I used to do a lot of voices. I would do, foreign dubbing, sketch comedy where I would play different characters from different regions, different regional accents and things. what happened was, I think I dubbed a couple of Hong Kong films for Dimension Films, which was a division of, at the time, Miramax, you know, and Jackie would dub himself, but then someone else would play a lot of the different characters. And the attitude, we actually lavished a lot of attention on it. The trick to it is being able to, sometimes in a day, you'll do 300 line replacements. You'll do, you know, you're working, watching a scene, you kind of discuss it, and then you're working on a beep tone system. In other words, you'll know your character. In one scene, your character is maybe a restaurateur and he's about to be beheaded by somebody. So you talk about that. You try and get the energy going for the character so you can have it, because I don't like when, you know, you have these monotone kind of dubs, or you feel like, you know, each line is just individually delivered in something. So what I tried to do in my own little way is create an arc for the characters that, even though you have to sort of line replace each thing just by the nature of the animation and recording, you know, you can't just go off on a full haul and give a 5-minute performance. You're going to drift off. But what I really tried to bring to the table was talking to the guy who was charged with creating the quote unquote English version of it. Is some of the cultural references just didn't play. They just simply didn't play. And so they'd make an editorial choice, or even ask, you know, they're like, look, is this making sense, you know, with the cultural differences between us? How do we make this human? How do we make this work? Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But for me, it was creating a genuine art. And I believe that arc to any character that I played, I meant it. I didn't treat it like it was something light. I didn't treat it like it was frivolous. I threw myself into it 100%, which is why you'll probably see 10, 11, you know, different times that I was asked back, because I threw myself into it completely. I did whole body acting with it. Some days you'd spend the whole time fighting or doing exertions and efforts. And I love the genre. I actually find it fascinating. It's dreamlike in that it's a window into an entirely different way of looking at the world, anime. So I approached it from a human sort of appeal of like, well, we all have cultural differences, but we also have very basic feelings. We all have basic things. What can I bring to the character to make, you know, the best possible translation of what the original actors intended? And often I would watch the original track to see what the inflection was, what the actor was doing, so that I could try and respect it as much as I could as an actor. You know, I'm a cog in the giant machine that puts out the English versions of these.
Right.
So, since you mentioned being a fan
Yes.
of the genre, what do you still watch? And if so, what are you watching?
I recently just watched, I mean, I like the big ones, the really ambitious ones. There was the reissue of Akira that came out where they went back and kind of rejiggered some of the effects shots and the things like what they did with, you know, Ghost in the Shell, the original. I've been watching that and following it. I don't watch a lot of anime now, only because my life has been completely crazy trying to get my own projects going. But I really like the sort of I even like Appleseed. I don't know if you guys are fans of that, but I you know, I love manga, but I also just like that style of animation. Those films as well, I really resonate with. I like the kinetics of them.
Now, have you noticed over the last couple of months, there's been an odd pushback from content from Japan? I mean, I don't know where the edict comes from here in the West, but there's been a lot of complaints with censorship issues, with especially with, you know, anime content, and then there's game content that comes from Japan that gets censored.
Yeah.
Do you think fans are rightly concerned, or do you think this is more of a trend that will stop and will eventually? Because in the beginning, as a kid, I always catch like Dragon Ball Z or shows like that. And they're so weird, so different. But then as time moved on and that shows specifically became more popular, you saw a lot of unedited releases across the board. And now and it seemed like that was the standard thing. But over the last few years, you've seen situations where I don't know exactly who released it, but you'll see somebody's like, oh, this is the unedited version of let's just pick Trigun. That's not what I'm using. But let's just pick that as an example. But then you see, you know, people wanted the unreleased, but now all of a sudden we're getting unreleased or uncensored, but it's still censored. Do you think we've come full circle to where we'll go back to an acceptance across the board of like the more, I don't want to say salacious because I don't want to use a sexual connotation, but like the more Japanese influenced stuff that's weirdly inaccessible to American audience. You think we'll go back to a time where they're not going to censor it for American audiences?
You know what? That's another great question. I actually think we're hypersensitive right now. A lot of anime, the way they draw, the girls look very young and innocent, and everyone is very triggered about that. The people are triggered about violence. They're triggered about anything that's considered, off the norm, which is weird because we're supposed to be at our most accepting, most open right now. But it feels like you're right. We're getting pushback because I don't know if it's cancel culture. I don't know if it's, just a correction and, like you say, a weird phase we're going through. But you see the same thing in anime that you do in comedy. The sacred cows that you used to be able to slaughter or at least explore or push the boundaries of. Right now, it's actually quite a conservative time. And not always great for art because you can have people protesting loudly that have never seen it. But their voices are heard through social media or whatever. And they're like, you can't have this, or it's doing this, or it's violent, or it's exploiting, or those girls look too young, or this or that. And it's sort of a misunderstanding of what the culture is in the anime format. But it's endemic of a lot of genres that I see. I'm literally writing something now where my co-writer's manager's only job is to go, you can't say that. That might offend gypsies. You can't say that. You might do this. And I had to take out the term, you got gypped. You know that term?
Really? That's offensive these days?
Yeah, because that offends gypsies, saying that you got gypped.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that.
It's absolutely true. And I was like, it didn't even occur to me that it was offensive. It didn't occur to me to say, you can't just say love between, a man and a woman here. You can't do that. And I was like, wow, that's an interesting constraint. And I think for me, we're in a huge course correction, and I think the pendulum needs to swing to the middle rather than to the far, either side. And as an artist, it's weird to walk on eggshells, and I'm sure it's also weird as somebody who appreciates, like if you enjoy anime and you're an end user of art. It must feel weird to be judged by what you like, or that an uncensored, unfettered version that the artist intended that is somehow wrong to seek out or to put out, or that something that was funny 20 years ago in context can't still be appreciated. It's like they literally want to pull Faulty Towers because it might offend somebody, and the same with anime, I would think.
What bothers me is this newfound. The weird thing is too, like you mentioned the word conservative, about this conservative approach to the arts. It's funny how it goes beyond what you would traditionally consider conservative or liberal politics. It's just like across the board, no matter where allegiances lie, there is this weird influx of art censorship. And it's comics, it's movies, it's video games, and because right now video games are the #1 form of entertainment. I actually talked to a guy who is a game developer, and he's like, gaming is the #1 thing in terms of money in America. Yes. And now we're getting this like pushback to a point where it's like almost not fun to be a gamer. It's not fun to be consuming this entertainment because everyone in this quest to be socially conscious has really
And I want to be super clear. When I say conservative, I'm not referring to politically conservative. I think some conservative philosophies are actually welcoming as forward-thinking as anything else. When I say conservative, I mean constricted in an artistic way. And one thing that I find interesting is that even say a film or something that celebrates a quote unquote conservative values could also be shouted down as not being correct, not being inclusive enough, not of this or that. So in a quest to be as diverse as possible, the world seems to be clamping down on more and more narrow casting, more and more sort of placating. And what you do is you dilute the art, or you dilute the intent. I mean, look at, video games are a great example. They are, either cinematic in an experience, or in an open world, you're able to explore and move things around. And you can have, hundreds of storylines evolving. But why should you not be able to explore all types of the human experience there? Why can't you have a traditional storyline that somebody might want to enjoy, have one that's radically different, have one that's this. Why is one right and the other one wrong? And why at a time when almost anything can be done with technology, are we choosing to do less and less within that? And I don't know if it's a corporate monetary decision to play it safe, or if it's, you know, cancel culture restricting what we're allowed, quote unquote, to enjoy. But yeah, video games are the most popular, mostly because they have the highest price point.
Yeah.
If you think about it, I work in that business. I've created with that, and you know, what other thing do you pay, you know, $50 for a disc or $40 for a download for, and then they pay no residuals to anyone that makes it. We are unfortunately not reimbursed, you know, with the profits of the game, which was part of the strike. There was a strike and nobody knew it, where all the SAG and AFTRA actors went on strike a couple of years ago against the game company and just went absolutely nowhere because people don't realize what actors do, and programmers are also getting crapped on, if I may. Because they'll design the game for a large company, they'll be working for someone who actually doesn't design games, but rather gives them a brief. You know, I want this, 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 and this. The person that actually works, you know, 20 hours a day programming and making it and creating that world is not the one who monetarily participates, nor do the people that you watch in the game. And so it's very profitable because, you know, 99.9% of the profit goes straight to the top and it's not shared around.
Yeah, I think we've started to hear a little bit about that finally coming out about, like, you know, the overworked programmers, like you said, and, you know, like same thing with actors, and voice acting now has become a big thing in the news with a lot of just recently they decided to not have Hank Azaria do Carl's voice on The Simpsons anymore, but bringing in a black actor. And, you know, it kind of backfired a few years ago when they went after Apu, because now he's pretty much non-existent on the show.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel about this whole thing? Because, like, I even got an argument with somebody. I'm like, I don't think it matters as long as the voice is right.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
And the guy who brought it up, I was like, well, what about, you know, Shredder, Darth Vader, Samurai Jack, all voiced by black men?
Yeah.
What's the difference? I don't seem to see a difference. And then he tried to give me some excuse about timbre of voice. And I'm like, are you really going to that point? That is even more racist than anything I've ever heard in this whole argument. It's like, the mental gymnastics some people get going with some of these points. It's just like, why should it really matter? I mean, I'm being in that business, how do you react to these kind of things?
Well, that's the problem with it. If you do something because it feels good, it's like it feels good to let people do it. And if you're in a wheelchair, then you should give the wheelchair thing to only wheelchair people, or only black people can play black people. But the problem is, like we talked about on our other discussion, is it's not the what if game. Because what if that means that a terrific Asian voice actor can't play a white person, or can they? Does that mean that they only can play, you know, white people can only play white people, but everybody else can play everyone, and that's okay? Is it that if someone
who writes the rules?
It's that if you reverse it and it sounds absurd, it's probably not a fair rule, and I like to live by that. I think, you know, there are amazing actors of all different races. I used to be the staff writer on Be Cool Scooby Doo. And in Scooby, we would just write a character. And sometimes a black guy played it. Sometimes a white guy played it. Sometimes a Hispanic guy played it. We tried not to think about that. And then you draw them later what they were supposed to look like or whatever they were. And the problem is, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. If you start mandating this or that, or this is incorrect, and we can't have this, and we can't have that, someone suffers. You know, white people are not the villain here. You know, correcting an injustice with another injustice is never a good thing. I feel that we have more access now to more animated content, more places you can put animated content. The last thing we should be doing is revisiting, revising things that already work. Like if Hank worked great in that series, great. Why don't we have another series? Hire some other people. Some of them can be black. Some of them can be whatever. Do that. You know, don't go back and keep mining it over. It's a bit like, you know, that running joke meme I saw recently where it's like every redheaded animated character is now recast as a black woman.
Right?
You know?
Oh yeah, the de-gingering. Yeah, like well, and here's another thing. Like I know, like part of the whole thing with like the Voice Actors Guild is like they only have so many actors they bring on, and then you voice sometimes like generally 2 or 3 voices in one session.
Yes.
And I think it's cheaper for the production, and then plus it gives the voice actors a little bit more work. And it may be some oversight on the Simpsons creators' part of not having at least 1 or 2 black voice actors in the cast to help fill out, you know, Springfield and maybe even some other races. But then you're starting to stack on and on and on and more people. And then you just, I just don't, I see the economics of that starts to fall out the window. Cause I mean, really like the way people are bringing this up, it's like the creators of the Simpsons weren't being racist when they made these characters and had these guys voice them. It was just happened to be that they have like, 5 or 6 main cast members, and 2 of those guys just happen to voice 90% of the town. You know?
Yeah, exactly. It's like saying Peter Sellers was being racist against French people when he did Clouseau. It's like Hank Azaria happened to do a funny voice that was probably based on somebody that he knew, and he ended up doing it. And it was funny up until a couple of years ago, and now it's not funny for some reason. And that's really the problem with it in general is anytime you retcon art and remove the context and remove what we've learned since then or what we're doing, or make nothing can be mocked, nothing can be made fun of. It's funny, we claim to be at our edgiest with, you know, internet entertainment. I'll see something on, like I recently saw a show on Netflix and it was like not funny, it was like disgusting humor, like pushing to the edge of pedophilia, awful animated humor. And I was like, now how can that be on? But at the same time, we're going back and saying, well, Blazing Saddles, that needs to go. This needs to go. This needs to go. We're picking weird battles.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, the last few weeks we've been battling, you know, the movie that shall not be named from Netflix here with a bunch of, you know, twerking in it. But yet those same people who were defending that had a big problem with movies, like you said, with like Blazing Saddles. Gone with the Wind. I remember a school canceling a screening of Cool Runnings because they said the movie was racist. I'm like, have you watched the movie? Do you get the point of the movie?
It's based on a true
Your genitals
story.
are confused, Tom.
What the hell?
Were you talking about the show Big Mouth?
John Candy.
What about Big Mouth? Sorry.
Were you talking about Tom Conkle? Is that the show you're talking about? Big Mouth?
I think it's called. Is it Hoops? I don't know what it is. Yeah, it was an animated thing, and I was like, oh my god! Like I wouldn't watch it, you know, with someone else in the room, and certainly not with a kid in the room. But it's out, and it's like, ooh, great, you know. And I was thinking to myself, and here I am worrying about gypped offending somebody. You know, it's a you have to choose the hill you're going to die on, and it seems like we're choosing the wrong hills.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of it's so alarming how you talk about, okay, so Jesse and I have this discussion all the time about how we had reached this point in entertainment. We don't really call it like a singularity, but we jokingly call it like this unity where you had reached a point where, you know, the difference was like a black actor wasn't really just a black actor, it was just an actor, you know, like Denzel Washington says, you know, I'm Denzel Washington. I'm not a black actor. I'm an actor. We had reached that point like 20-ish years ago.
Yes.
And we are always trying to pinpoint what happened in entertainment or even in the world in general. What happened to get us down the path where a movie, Cool Runnings, is a feel-good film. I loved that movie as a kid. It's a great real-life story. All of a sudden, that's racist. That is ridiculous.
Well, not only that, the whole movie's about rising above diversity or adversity and embracing diversity, I meant to say, but
no, it is, and I think you're right. It's like if you show a kid now films from the 70s and they see all these great black actors in them, and you see, like, I was recently watching something with my son, and he's like, well, there's a guy that did, and we're looking at all these ones, and I was like, yeah, you know, Clint Eastwood was casting black guys equal, you know, as equal people, you know, 40 years ago, 45 years ago. They were interesting, layered characters that were coming out. Or Will Smith was one of the, you know, biggest stars ever in the 90s, and then Eddie Murphy before that.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, the identity politics came into it. And it's almost the difference between, like you said, introducing here's my friend versus here's my Asian friend or here's my black friend. Because I think what that means in some sort of way is I have more authority because speaking as a black woman, blank, and then it's an unquestionable thing. It's not something you can't debate. So if I said, you know, can you imagine if I said, now speaking as a white man, I feel that, you know, and you'd be like, why did you just qualify it? Why don't you just give me your opinion? You know, it's like, I think boats are better speaking as a white man. And it's like,
personal point of privilege.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. And I think we have devolved from content back to the, you know, person, the character, you know, it is now not important, but rather, you know, from whence it came. It's like, well, I was saying this before. It's like, well, I would have enjoyed this piece by Mozart, but how old was he? Or now, was this a man that wrote this?
He's too white. Yeah.
Yeah. I've enjoyed things my whole life where I've been pleasantly surprised. I'm like, oh, didn't know that's who created it. Didn't know, you know, Ida Lupino, she directed this film noir in the 1940s. She was a female director. Great. You know,
speaking of like James Earl Jones, I mean, I was just talking earlier on a podcast with Culture Casino about how I was probably in my early teens or late, you know, like 10, 11 years old by the time I finally realized James Earl Jones is the voice of Darth Vader. You know, I see all these other movies, and it's just like, wait a minute, that's the same guy.
He sounds familiar.
Yeah, just put it together. You know, I'd seen Coming to America and all these other movies with him in it where he's played all kinds of different parts.
Dr. Strangelove?
Yeah, it just finally dawned on me. Yeah, Dr. Strangelove and all that stuff. Yeah. It's just like, what the hell? You know, it's like, why didn't I not notice that before? But that's the point, is it didn't matter. It doesn't matter. And you don't think about those things. And that's, and like I brought up to so many people lately, and Mecca knows what I'm talking about. It's like, we've had so many more of these conversations than I've ever had in my life in the last 5 years. And it's just getting ridiculous.
It's tiring. And by the way, thanks to the shout out for Be Cool Scooby Doo. I saw somebody there like,
yeah, you got some Scooby Doo fans in the chat.
Yeah, I got to work. Mark Hamill played a character that I wrote in. I wrote an episode called Area 51 Adjacent. It's two more secret than Area 51. It's actually Area 51. And Mark ended up being one of the characters on it, so it was really amazing to have him do a character that I actually wrote, which felt really cool.
Is he pretty fun?
So check
in real
out
life?
Be Cool Scooby Doo. I'm sorry?
Is Mark Hamill pretty fun in real life?
Yes, he's a great guy. He actually is a really he's very grateful for what he has now, and from what I've seen of him, he seems at peace with it. And he built the largest voice acting company, probably in the world, but definitely in Los Angeles, out of his passion for doing voice acting and the ability to transform himself and not be judged for just being one character.
The reason I had asked you that question is because I have a friend who got invited to his house for dinner, and he told me these crazy stories about Mark Hamill, and he sounds like the coolest dude ever. So I was like, "Holy shit! Like, I would love to meet him."
Anyone who plays the Joker must be cool.
Yes.
Oh,
no, it was weird. It was weird hearing him do an episode where it says, you know, screenplay by Tom Conkle, and then I hear Mark Hamill. I'm like, wow, I would be high-fiving the 10-year-old version of me right now that got in that car to leave.
That's Luke fucking Skywalker.
Yeah, I've had a lot of moments like that where I've met amazing people while I'm working. You know, Christopher Guest, I did a bunch of commercials.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
For those who in the chat who may not know who that is, that's one of the founding members of Spinal Tap.
Yes,
and he's also on Saturday Night Live, and you may know him best from Princess Bride.
Yes, and he's married to Jamie Lee Curtis.
And he's, of course, married. He's Mr. Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yes. They're Lord and Lady. Lord
to say, isn't he German royalty or something like that?
Yeah, he's I believe English royalty. He was Lord Guest.
Oh,
so yeah, very nice. He brought me back for we had fun doing. I think it was a Carrier air conditioning spot that was insane about 10 years ago, and then he brought me back for another parody thing that ended up being, I think, one of the Super Bowl commercials a couple of years ago. Actually, I think it was banned during the Super Bowl because they it was a parody of Habitat for Humanity, and people tried to get it banned while it was airing during the Super Bowl.
Geez.
And then I've worked with just wonderful people that that it's funny when you have to be careful when you meet your heroes. You know, half of them disappoint, the other half exceed your expectations.
Right.
I would have to say, most of the people that I've interfaced with, that I've worked with, that you know I admire or I found some inspiration from, have been great people. And the very best people that are functioning at the highest level, they don't need to prove anything. They are inclusive. They do bring you in on the process. They do welcome, you know, collaboration. They don't need to clamp down and go, no, 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 this must be my idea. Because they know if you throw out a good thing as a director or a writer, it makes them look good. And we all want to, you know, the whole point of why I want to tell stories, why I want to act or direct or write, is you want people to just forget their problems for a couple hours. You want them to be entertained. You want them to latch on to something and go, God, I like this. I'm enjoying it. It makes me feel good when I think about it. I can explore what you guys were trying to create. And hopefully when you go back and see it, you know, the best compliment I ever got is like somebody watched Trouble Is My Business, like for the third time. They're like, dude, the globe in the background, it's turned upside down. Whenever you see her, like she turns his world upside down. And I go, you know what? I purposely put that globe upside down behind her. Every time you see her, she's turning his world upside down. So he got the globe thing. And I'm like, yes. You know, it's stuff like that is why you create.
Well, I wish more people took that approach, because it's so nice to be able to watch a piece of entertainment. It's really refreshing today. And it's almost alarming how bad example, but I'm going to make it. Like when I'd watch Daniel Craig Bond movies, anytime I heard the phrase, the name's Bond, James Bond, I went, oh, wait, I'm watching a James Bond movie. I forgot, because they've tried to suck the fun and they've made it so serious. Yes. That's what that's what I don't like about today's entertainment is like, I watched Sonic the Hedgehog or Bill and Ted or something. I'm like, wow, this is very free of the crap that I'm, you know, so used to. And it should be the other way around, where it's, you know, it's entertainment for everybody. And then when you get to one of these weird preachy pieces, it's either really well done, like a Twilight Zone or an old EC comic, or it's modern day crap, like a Jordan Peele preachy, like the new Twilight Zone. That's why it's just, it's, you talked about the pendulum. You brought this pendulum shift. I definitely see the pendulum shifting back. We, you know, talk about gaming and stuff. Some of the bigger titles definitely put it like this. Gaming is so expensive to produce a game, they can't afford to pick a side. Like realistically, you have to appeal to everybody. That's why the Last of Us 2 controversy really caught everyone's attention over the summer, because you have a PlayStation game that should be for everyone, and you have the creator kind of coming in there saying shit very akin to Brie Larson last year with Captain Marvel. And there's a reason why you know, the game Last of Us 2 was, you know, on a big sale last week, and other big AAA titles don't usually hit sales as quickly on PlayStation market. And people go, oh, Steam has sales all the time. Yeah, but Steam's a little different. But
I think you're right. It's very dangerous when you're a creator of anything to say that the customer's always wrong. I think when you turn on your audience and you don't listen to what is being, you know, responded to, what is resonating with people, when you stop listening to it and you start sending a one-way message of this is what's good for you, or you don't like this yet but I'll force you to, you're going to get pushback. And what I like doing with my entertainment is, you're right. What I loved about the original James Bond is it constantly felt like Sean Connery was this sort of knight slumming above everything else, and he was having fun. He had a twinkle in his eye. He didn't hate his job. He didn't hate the fact that he was in the movie. He didn't once comment negatively about his own thing, like, oh, I wish I wasn't in this, you know, kind of thing. And the problem now is you run into so many either deconstructionist or grimdark, I call them, you know, a grimdark approach to what used to be just entertainment. Now it's like, well, no, we have to stare at our navel. We have to deconstruct it. We should feel guilty about being this. We you know, how do we feel about, you know, negatively about this? And I wonder if, you know, that's just part of the zeitgeist right now, where people are getting very rich on some of these ideas, and maybe they just feel guilty, you know, that they're just like, well, you know, we've had the Bond franchise for this long. Why do you people still like it? We don't like it, you know, and maybe there's a little bit of that creeping into the art, where it's almost, I don't know, self-loathing. Is that a possibility?
That's an interesting perspective. I don't think anyone's ever posed, because we've only had been fortunate enough to have a handful of people that have, you know, created either, you know, worked on TV or movies or stuff like that, and that's not anything that's come up. But I'm gonna keep that with me and think about things in that, under that guise, with that lens, because we keep trying to figure out why. Maybe that is as crazy as it might sound to some people in the chat, like, oh, that's a terrible reasoning. It could be true though, because can you think of anything else as convincing right now?
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly open to other opinions. Anyone in the chat, that has it. I honestly, as somebody who does this, I am considered an outlier when I come and I pitch something like, I have this thing called Island in the Stars, which is like a sort of Jules Verne Treasure Island thing that I want Vernon to be in. I want Sam Neill to be in, a couple other people. That was the thing that I was working on getting financed at the beginning of the year. And it's something that your grandparents would enjoy because it's an adventure and it tells you something about being human and being on a quest, and kids will enjoy it because it's got battles and it's got an excitement and at its core, it's about something. But it never once did I sit and write or come up with the film and go, and this is going to teach you a lesson. And you know what? I really don't like these films, but I'm going to make this one. That'll show you. And that's considered unusual when I'm pitching things. And I always find it strange to see how the room looks when I go, so it's not grim and dark. I'm not interested in rebooting something that's already amazing. I want to do something original that people feel good about, that anybody can see on, and possibly there's not even a swear word in it. Go figure, and you'll just see people stunned, like, well, what about edgy? What about everybody?
Well,
what about this?
We've heard them directly come out and say, like, they definitely want to make, they'll say, oh, we're out to make the Trump voters squirm and get pissed.
It's like, why?
It's like we're out to make the anti-feminists and the misogynists freak out and the racists freak out. It's like, if you actually go by the percentage of the people that are actually considered that, it's so low.
Oh, I agree, and it's also insulting to women, I think.
Right?
When you say, yeah, women don't like men. They don't want to watch men. It's like, no, I have a feeling if I had a night and a date night and she said, hey, I want to watch Predator, I'd be like, okay, you're a keeper, first off. Second of all, women can enjoy the same thing. They don't need to only see other women or deal with women's issues or be pandered to. Women can enjoy a broad spectrum of things just like men can. Most men made rom-coms. So it's insulting to, anytime, if a women's film comes out and it's always a lesbian love story with no men or how bad men are, it's condescending to even approach that. And there's movies out right now like that.
Meanwhile,
and it feels like a lot.
Aquaman.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But it feels like a lot of this white guilt bullshit is coming from people like Brie Larson and all these people who have had nothing but a silver spoon in their mouths their whole lives.
Yes.
And have never known what struggle is. And it's like, homelessness doesn't give a shit what color your skin is or what's between your legs. They don't understand that at all.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to address a couple of the super chats that had rolled in because we have some that are directed at Tom. And I have a bunch of topics, not a bunch of topics, but other things I did want to ask, and I don't want these people to feel left out. So first off, we have Matt G again that says, I wish they would release A New Hope in theaters. Well, Matt G, if they would have done that over The Empire Strikes Back over the last weekend, I would have made it top priority to go see that film. Not that Empire Strikes Back is any lesser. Just, A New Hope is my favorite. Bobby James says, I hope everyone is well. Are we all well tonight?
Yeah, we're doing well.
Thank you, Bobby James. Matt G says, what period was the best film noir or best for film noirs?
Ooh, that's a great question. The best period for film noir, in my opinion, is around 1947. That's the year I set my film in, and I set it there for a reason. It was just after World War II. You had people coming back, and you have to be in a fairly well-off country to have as negative or as pessimistic an attitude as film noir. It's a luxury. And so film noir really came into its own. A couple of things happened. One was women had worked, during World War II and could be seen as the femme fatale or the instigator, and they had a lot of agency in film noir. Film noir was very much under the radar in studios, so it was very little control other than some censorship of film noir production because they were considered the little pictures, the B pictures. So around 1947, you'd already had Maltese Falcon come out. You're getting A Big Sleep. The one for me that was amazing was Out of the Past with Robert Mitchum and Jane Greer. That was an amazing, amazing film because it was written beautifully. It was shot beautifully. The noir attitude really kind of borrowed a little bit from Europe, you know, German expressionism, a little bit of French fatalism, but it really became as American as the Western. You know, there were UK noirs, there were other, you know, French noirs, but really it was an American attitude that permeated the look, it permeated the characters. And I think it went from 1947 until about Touch of Evil would be the last true, you know, gold period film noir. Orson Welles' Touch of Evil kind of capping it off as far as an attitude. And of course, there's been great noir since with Chinatown, LA Confidential, even Sin City. But I think if you're looking for golden age where the writing was amazing, like Double Indemnity, Sunset Boulevard, all look in that period right there, because they're just a brilliant flowering. It was a perfect storm of talented filmmakers, access to low budget equipment, and an attitude coming out of the war that just made a fascinating time for cinema.
Now, I'm glad you brought up Sin City. Are you a comics guy at all? You read anything or?
I used to read them a lot. I was in the 80s when I was, you know, in college growing up. I read voraciously all the usual suspects, you know, Frank Miller and Watchmen and Grimjack. I used to love Grimjack.
Oh yeah.
So I was into a lot of comics like that. I have fallen off some on my comic reading, but I still use them as an inspiration when I'm storyboarding.
I just was wondering, because a moment ago you made a point about the deconstruction of
Yes.
the genres and stuff, and my mind instantly went to Watchmen, because for the last 35 years, comics have been trying to essentially be Watchmen, and until I'd say The Boys, I haven't found something that breaks it down in a different way that I find enjoyable and still recent, because all entertainment is always chasing after the high of whatever the biggest thing is, either financially or critically. I mean, I use the example all the time. The reason James Bond went to outer space was because Star Wars was a huge hit. You can even watch The Spy Who Loved Me and see that the next film was meant to be for your eyes only. But they're always chasing the the highs and stuff, and it's almost tiresome at times in comics to try to retell Watchmen, to reinvent the wheel. And I think we're getting that a lot in entertainment too. When we talk about trends, you know, you talked about grimdark stuff earlier. Everyone's trying to be Nolan with Batman.
Yeah,
and now you move on to other stuff, and it almost was tiring to see a dark, gritty Spider-Man and a dark, gritty this and that. It doesn't always work.
Yeah, no, and Mecca, by the way, I love your channel. I watch you often. I love your take on things.
Thank you.
I feel like, and maybe I can hand this off to you, I feel like it's cyclical. I think you sit with a genre long enough for it to start, as we were just saying, perhaps to stew in its own juices so long that it starts to self-loathe or eat itself. And I think Watchmen was the beginning of a cycle of re-examining in a brilliant way, you know, in many ways, kind of the Citizen Kane of the deconstructionist comic. I think you're right. With every genre, it goes in this cycle of you have a flowering of it. You have like a great example. It sort of reaches its peak, and then it sort of stews and examines itself until it begins to turn on itself, and it either morphs into something else or it disappears. And the same thing happens with Westerns. You know, Westerns were huge. It was a huge genre. Then Westerns started getting dark. Then they deconstruct, you know, the deconstruction. And then you didn't really have anything deconstructing it until Unforgiven.
Right,
You know?
right.
And so I think you're absolutely right. I think it is a
Well, it kind of started with the
a
spaghetti
cycle.
western a little bit there, and then the 70s you had and then into the Wild Bunch, and then it ended with Unforgiven. Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Like, because like I think you said, like, you know, it started with westerns, then it went into film noir, then probably like monster movies were the next big thing after that, and then space movies and gangster films at one point were also big with noir and stuff, and you know, and then like superhero movies came along and kind of replaced the action movies of the 80s. That was kind of probably the next big, you know, the reinvention of the action star.
Yes, you're
with
right.
Schwarzenegger and Sly and all them. And yeah, these things are kind of very cyclical. Do you see the superhero genre lasting as much longer, or do you feel like with Endgame and stuff like that, we've reached that pinnacle or that peak that you were just talking about?
Well, I'd love to hear what you guys think, but I do think, isn't it interesting how in the rhythms of the world, Endgame came out, it was the end of this very intricate tapestry that they put together, and I like the Marvel films. I watch them for enjoyment. I think they're well-crafted films by artisans. It brought everything to a close. It was the biggest movie in history as far as, you know, audience reception, and people were totally into it. But isn't it interesting? It brought it to this peak, and then even the world itself just hit the pause button, and everything changed. And everything kind of went away and got pushed aside, and we're not the same people watching.
Almost like
anymore.
the snap. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's like Endgame isn't as funny now because I can't go out to the restaurant and sit down, and I don't see my friends as much anymore. It feels like I'm living Endgame.
Like
but
you
I
lost
think
half your
Endgame
life,
was in the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
I really do. I don't know what you guys think of it, but I love the Marvel movies, and I feel like it was a natural break in the entertainment. It crested at just the right time. We all took that wave. We rode it. Everyone enjoyed it and loved it. That movie was, I loved it. I thought it was great. And now look, the entire world did a reset. And I don't think it could happen again, but also I don't think the same energy is out there. I think when Marvel restarts, it's going to be, their foot's going to be stepping in a different stream, if I can use that analogy. It's like, you can't go home again. You can't go back. We now have something that now we look at it in retrospect. You're like, that was a gold period for them. You can't try and remake it. You can't try and recapture it. You have to reinvent yourself.
And I think, well, and that's probably a good place for us to jump onto the Snyder Cut too, because I know you want to talk about that, Jeff. I mean, that's kind of like the next big thing. Like, there's a part of the audience that enjoyed those films. I personally didn't care for Man of Steel and BBS all that much. The rest of the films here and there, take or leave, depending on the film. But we've come to a point where I think, you know, the fans are speaking out more. I wonder if Marvel's going to start listening to the fans more as well going forward, because especially now they're going to spend, what was it, Jeff? Almost $100 million they're talking on.
Yeah. Okay. So it was originally going to be 20 to 30. Now it's 70, possibly.
Wow.
So we're talking more than double for these reshoots, which remember, initially we weren't talking reshoots. We were talking updated CGI and just fixing.
Well, to be clear, Midnight's Edge and a few other people always did stand by that there was a Snyder Cut, but it was never complete. Meaning, from what we heard from that test screening, and I don't know if, Tom, you know anything about this at all, but from that original test screening where they made the decision to go with Joss Whedon and away from this and reshoot everything, the movie was about 75 to 80% shot, meaning there was at least 20% of the film needed to finish being shot yet. Like, there was things that needed to be done.
Yeah.
Well, that being said, though, I'm just going by what Warner Brothers keeps telling us publicly. And now it's interesting because, you know, you have something as innocent as the Donner cut of Superman 2. But now the Snyder cut, it's no longer just about this movie getting finished. It's about, you know, battle lines between fandoms and this and that and the internal struggles behind the scenes. You know, Tom, it's interesting that you brought up the Marvel stuff. I do fully agree that it was this golden age. I mean, I grew up in the 90s when Marvel shows were at the peak. You had X-Men and Spider-Man, and then you had a bunch of lesser shows, but superheroes were super popular. And then you had a nice little lull right post Batman and Robin, and then you have X-Men and Spider-Man come out in a 1-2 punch. And I know folks are going to say Blade. I saw Blade in theaters at, 10 years old. Should I have? I don't know. It was a great movie.
I was going to say, Blade doesn't really fall into that spandex superhero category. Neither did Spawn, really, in a way.
I would almost, even X-Men to a degree, because X-Men was chasing that Matrix aesthetic and that new age look that a lot of early 2000s, late 90s films had. Spider-Man was the first superhero film since Superman to lean into traditional red and blue suit, crazy zany supervillain antics, and thankfully the MCU had kind of carried that on because they started out, slightly realistic. Iron Man's a very grounded film, but I mean, by the end of it, we're looking at Infinity Stones and talking raccoons and all of this stuff, and they really followed the audience. We talked about just a second ago about listening to the audience. I think they really did perfectly listen to the audience because they are able to figure out where their attentions lie, what they can sell, and then how to continue that trend. Now, on the opposite side, since we're on the DC camp, I love the big characters, but DC is almost trying to take an approach that it's embarrassed of what it has. They're embarrassed of some of the crazier, more outlandish slapstick elements. And I think that's going to hurt them down the road because we can't reach that. Like every time with the DC mainline property, they want to go dark and gritty. You have something like a Joker, which is darker and grittier and more realistic, and they can't take it that approach because it doesn't make them money. So do you think that, Tom, as you work in the industry, have you ever seen anything like the Snyder Cut? And do you think that it's a smart business move for the studio?
Well, I mean, let me qualify this because I work in the business. I like Zach. I liked 300. I know that he's a genuine guy and he loves making genre films. However, in the case of Justice League, shit on Velvet is still shit.
I don't think I've ever heard it put so eloquently.
No, I think I made that up. And here's the thing. When your fundamentals aren't there, they didn't earn that movie. The Avengers movie was earned through a network of intersecting storylines and character development that led to a feeling of that classic. When I was a kid, I loved movies about the Dirty Dozen or like a team of people that all got together to do something. And they caught that as lightning in a bottle. What they didn't earn in Justice League was they didn't have the team. They didn't spend enough time creating a narrative where the story was happening inside the characters. We were simply presented with cardboard cutouts of those characters and in shorthand given like, well, we should care about her because she's the powerful girl. He's the black guy who's a robot. He's this or that. There was no effort to have the quiet moments that were in the films, the Marvel films, that led up to us wanting to cry with a lump in our throat when we see Captain America finally dancing with his girl. Anyone human is going to feel something because they've been on a journey. And Marvel did it right because Marvel used the fact that it became popular through Iron Man and started to make money. They used that in the best possible way. And that Kevin Feige decided to say, you know what? I'm not only going to take chances, but I'm going to make a stylistic choice about what I do with the movies. I'm going to put Guardians of the Galaxy out and be a little crazy and do this. But by the same token, I'm going to put out a Winter Soldier, which honors the kind of 70s espionage thing, but is still an incredibly well-crafted film. Each one is completely tonally different, but they all coexist because there's an overall guiding hand. And what that guiding hand is exactly what old studio chiefs used to do. An old studio chief would be like, I know what a Warner Brothers picture is. I know what a Paramount movie is. You had a guiding hand behind it. Even classic Star Trek films from the 1980s, you had somebody like Nick Meyer, and you had all these different people that kept an eye on keeping the tone together. The problem with DC is, who's the person that's keeping DC together? I defy any of the three of you to name who is the person who is the stylistic hand who said, I have to see DC movies. I must see these films. I must make them. Who is that person?
That's the biggest problem. And that's something Midnight's Edge has covered from the start is this whole thing was that we had at one point, I think so many different people in command over at DC. They had more people in command regime changes than they actually did films out.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not even a joke. Like it's serious. Like they had, because they went from Zack Snyder to Ben Affleck to Jeff Johns and what's his face, Berg.
Yeah.
And then
if you could change people,
all them guys, it was just like next guy.
Yeah, and if you can change people and nothing looks different, it means that the other person wasn't doing anything. And for me, that's the problem. If by some miracle they said, Tom, I want you to be in charge of the DC universe, you're the filmmaker, the first thing I would do is sit down in a writer's room with everybody, and we would break out the stories. We would figure out tonally where we were going. We would figure out where, great, you want to do Batman as more of a film noir. That looks like that's what's happening with Matt Reeves. Okay, great. With Superman, let's go. Richard Donner was onto something. Let's do something where the hero actually likes America, where he's an alien, but he actually embodies more of what we see of ourselves. Take Wonder Woman and go, okay, we've created this character and she spans this great period of time, World War I to now. How do we make her intrinsic to the narrative? And then how do we have them coming together and know that they need each other to do this and that they will have a life after this? What is the original appeal of the characters that we love? And that should have been the first thing that happened. And then every every decision, everything needs to eventually come back to me if I'm in charge of it, and it's thumbs up or thumbs down, and no one person should be able to hijack it with any kind of social justice or whatever the flavor of the day is. You know, I would never let the Wonder Woman be destroyed after you created such a great thing with Patty. You know, Patty Jenkins did a good job, I thought. You can develop that, create that tone. But then you have Batwoman come out and it looks like it's made from a completely different studio. It feels all wrong. It's misguided. And it's like, well, wait, you're all the same. This is all coming from the same place. And yet somehow no boat knows what the other one does. And that's what I said about, you know, shit on Velvet is still shit. It's like, you can throw money at it. You can say, well, look, we've got Superman, we've got this, and, you know, we'll spend even more money fixing Justice League. But at the end of the day, I don't think that the audience feels like you've earned it yet, because you didn't give me a Superman story that got me behind Superman. The Batman and Justice League, I don't feel like I spent any time with, because there was not even a solo Batman with Ben Affleck. And then you threw in characters I'd never met before as the rest of them, and then you had Aquaman, who had just his own movie, and then all of a sudden he's thrown in a sort of a second banana in this film. And to me, you need to clamp down on it in an old studio style, and you need to go, I want you all to feel like you're able to contribute, but there's a stylistic approach to this. We're going to have it be cohesive. We're going to make it a great experience for the audience, in that they're not going to have what they expect. You are supposed to do what the audience expects. If I go to a horror movie, I want to see a horror movie. If I go to see a adventure, I don't want to go, ha, see how clever we are? We told you you're coming to an adventure, but we're going to pull the rug out. There's no adventure. Get it? There's nothing happening. Isn't that funny? And I feel like that's the attitude. And I think until DC decides that there is somebody who is passionate about it, it's going to happen. You're going to have occasional blips where it's like, oh, that was great. They did a great job. It's too bad they're not in charge of everything else.
Sorry, I was just reading about some of the stuff in the chat. Sure. Sorry, the DC stuff getting canceled on TV has been interesting to me. It's so funny how last week we're all high on WandaVision, and now this week everyone's just like, oh, DC could just cancel their TV run. So I apologize for that random cut in here. But the reason, you know, I asked you the specific question is because I've been worried since the Snyder Cut that this was going to be a thing. Studios would look at ways to make money, put it on their streaming service. And then as of this week, we've learned that Mulan wasn't really the hit that everyone claimed it was. Now, Tom Proper from the show, have you been following the news about Mulan didn't actually make 261 million like people are claiming it did?
I've heard something about the numbers, and I'm not surprised. It all depends, like, because here's the thing. It's like with Netflix, they don't have to give anybody numbers for anything. So they can just tell everybody whatever the hell they want. You know what I mean? It's kind of like with CBS All Access and Parrot Analytics. It's like, it's a bunch of fugazi. You know, unless we see some hard fucking numbers, they can't prove shit to us. Well, what I did see was, you know, like, nobody really liked it that did see it, and I have a hard time believing that many people would have been that desperate to spend $30 knowing damn well it's going to be on there for free in 3 months, because I heard a lot of people got pissed when they heard that. So I can imagine a lot of people tried to cancel their if they had pre-ordered it or anything like that. I mean, I don't know if anybody in the chat did. Please tell me if you did and if you were successful, because I don't know too many people who actually went out of their way to see it. Only a few, very few.
Well,
Yeah.
the initial sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just saying I didn't see it, so.
Now, I'm no interest in watching this movie. Mulan's never been a thing. Tom Conkle, since we called you the full name. 98 Mulan, animated. Have you seen it? And if so, what do you think?
I thought it was a good film, especially for that period. For me, the thing about that film that worked is, you know, Disney was on this very long journey of basically doing animated Broadway shows. And what I mean by that is it has the high drama and action that you might have on stage, incorporating music, incorporating a certain tonal style. But to me, Mulan was ultimately about her making a decision to become a soldier, to go into the battle, but she was not a superhero. And I think the problem with revisiting something, and this again puzzles me about Hollywood, instead of making movies over again that were a terrific idea, but say, in the 1950s, you didn't have the money to do it right. So now we could do it right because it was awful, but it was a great idea. No, we take something where it's like, that's really good. We can make something that's almost as good as that now. And we can either do it live action, or we can just reboot it and do a CG, augmentation to it. And the problem with Mulan is not only did they make her, overpowered and from the beginning invincible, which again plays into what all three of us have been talking about, which is, or all four of us have been talking about, is the idea that because she's a female hero, she must be created out of whole cloth and perfect to begin with. Women don't want that. They want to see somebody they can relate to who has flaws just like men have, and need to learn or can be set back, who don't have a super proficiency in everything. And really, Mulan, I think, lost the point when Mulan decided to become a member of the army. In the live action, it's a cut. They don't even have the moment where she, from the animated thing, where she's deciding to go into the army and putting on the armor and becoming that thing. It's like in the movie, it's brushed through as if that's the least important. What's important are the kinetics, or what's important are, let's see how powerful she is, and she's ahead, on top of everything, and can win this battle alone, basically. And to me, it's another one of those where you want to go to whoever's doing it, go, did you see Mulan? Like, it's pretty good. You guys should probably watch it before you make this movie. And it feels like that. It happens a lot. I say that about Star Trek.
You would
Star
think,
Trek, I want to go, guys, have you seen Star Trek? It's a great series.
Well, you brought up Nicholas Meyer earlier. He had
Yeah.
never really been into Star Trek before he got into Star Trek, but when he got the job, he's like, well, I'm going to better get into the show. And he got into the show. And
Exactly. And he's like,
as soon as it clicked, I'm
going to make the best episode I can of this. I love these guys. I'm going to do my best for it. Let's all make movies that we want to see. That I actually want to see, and the audience isn't wrong. I actually want to make them happy and entertained, and I can challenge them. There's a condescension in going, well, if you just give the fans everything they want, then you're not really stretching them. You're not challenging. No, bullshit. You can surprise people. You can take, a turn. People will love that. The audience eats that up when they're like, oh, I didn't know it was going there. Or you under-promised and you over-delivered. In my production company, that is our motto. It's like under promise, over deliver. Even if you're working with very little, do the absolute best you can, and you're doing it for an audience. I always have the person watching it is in my mind when I'm sitting there watching it on set, or if I'm writing it, or if I'm performing it, or directing it. I'm thinking of the people watching it, going, "Oh, they're going to laugh there," or that. I hope they smile. I hope this should energize you. The idea that you're creating in a vacuum is arrogant.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to ask you, with that mindset, where do you think Disney went wrong with their Star Wars approach, since you brought up Mulan being, overpowered? And why do you think that's a thing across the board, just in genre entertainment right now? Like, you've had decades of women, and I hate to use the phrase strong, whatever women, but like for decades, you had Leia, you had Ripley, you've had tons of them, even Vasquez and Aliens, if you want to do a twofer right there. That chick was tough as nails.
Connor, and there's
Sarah Connor, yeah.
It's condescending. We were talking about, it's like Sigourney Weaver got nominated for an Oscar for Aliens. So it's not that men hate women, and women do love men, and men love women. We need to stop with that stupid narrative. The idea that you must overcompensate, to me, it's something in the psyche of the arts right now, and there is a perception that somehow there's something to prove, and that at the expense of narrative, you will find a character that reinforces your own inadequacies, or your own feeling of helplessness, or your own feeling that, like, no, I haven't gotten my due. I don't have this. There were old dudes as the main people in Star Wars, so I'm going to put women in, but also they're also way more powerful than the dudes were in Star Wars. And what we need to do is stop for a moment and think, no, we're humans. And the women that are the main character, if Rey had exposed the vulnerabilities that Luke did, if she had been allowed to fail like Luke did on Dagobah, if she had been allowed to go, you know what, I don't know all the answers. Han, can you help me fly the Millennium Falcon? I really want to fly. If you had seen her do things where she asked for help or got help or learned a hard lesson, not only would it resonate with women, but men would appreciate the character the same way they did when you see, we just use Ripley as an example. Ripley failed. She thought she lost Newt. She had to go back. She thought she was letting her people down by going back to the, she said, I'm not going back to that place. She had nightmares. She was a haunted person. And she didn't know how to use a gun. She asked a person who actually would know how to use a gun, which was Hicks. Hey, how do I use the gun? If I made that movie today, it would be, well, why haven't Sigourney Weaver?
She'd be the one showing
Michael
him
Bay
how to do it better.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be like, now wait a minute. How did a miner on a mining ship learn how to use this automatic weapon? But
no, it's just because they would nowadays. But no, that's a great example.
Yeah, you respect the women by going, you know what? She may not know everything, but she asked. She's like, hey, okay, I don't like guns, but I'll take it. And then she kicked ass with that gun. And we believed her.
Stay away from her, you bitch.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a great moment. And
well, it's
we wouldn't do that now.
Yeah, these same people who don't understand why they just like. Did you see Terminator: Dark Fate?
I avoided that. I did not.
Okay. Do you kind of know how it starts, though?
Oh yeah.
Okay, it's like
I had some friends work on that.
Everything you're saying goes right into the whole idea of they don't even understand the message they're trying to send in the end, because they took Sarah Connor and made her a failure just to build up this absolute no one.
Yes.
And there's so many people who would have been so accepting if, like, okay, look at I almost called him Leonardo DiCaprio, but Edward Furlong's life and the way things went. You could actually have used that in the film, been like, look, they stopped Judgment Day in Terminator 2, but John Connor's still a fucked up, scarred kid.
Yeah.
And he grew up to be a fucked up, scarred adult.
Yep.
Who ended up having like a kid. And she's like just whatever, like she's not trained like he is, but now realize, they didn't really stop Judgment Day. They just delayed it. And now who can train her but Sarah Connor, especially after John Connor valiantly, dies trying to protect his daughter or something like that. That's the way you put a character out like that. You don't do what you did to him, especially a kid of all fucking like that. Was just
right,
revolting on top of all that other bullshit.
The idea of just up and shooting the character, I think we could spoiler alert. The idea of up and shooting the character at the beginning as a kind of flick of the finger of, hey, you're in for a wild ride, doesn't work, because the fans were emotionally along for the ride in the original Terminator and Terminator 2 because it was important that he live. We were told it was important that he be protected. So the fact that he can be killed and the story continues makes him ineffectual. It makes him sidelined in the story in a way that they sidelined Luke in Star Wars. Whenever I feel like you're weak as a writer, if you need to knock everybody else down in order to prop the other person up, you're not writing a strong enough character.
Absolutely. And that whole reason what you just brought up, Luke, is what brings us here to the High Council. That's what it's built on, is just the destruction of characters. And that's what we're seeing constantly. And I'm glad that somebody in the industry actually gets that.
Yeah. I had hoped to see the three originals in at least a few scenes of those movies. And to me, it was the hugest miscalculation. And I knew tonally something was off, because I remember sitting in Force Awakens and I was like, wait a minute. Now we're going to see like the people from Star Wars at some point, right? And then when we didn't, I knew you could smell something was wrong, that a deconstruction, that a revision, that a we know better attitude was happening. And sure enough, it played out that way.
Right. Absolutely.
So I do want to have actually a ton of questions for you tonight, Tom. So I would like to read a couple more as we move along. By the way, folks, Matt G asks, do you have any other movies that are a big influence on you?
On me? Oh my gosh. That's like picking a favorite child. Yes, I have tons of movies that are a big influence. For pure narrative kinetic storytelling, The Road Warrior is a huge influence. For just interweaving dramatic stories. The original Godfather is a huge one. I love the fantasy films of George Pal, going back to War of the Worlds and The Time Machine. I love The Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is pure cinema, is absolutely brilliant. I love for comedy, Monty Python, Life of Brian, you can't go wrong. For modern day influences, I am very, very interested in a lot of what's going on in Hong Kong film, like The Raid Redemption. I'm fascinated by the stuff that Nolan's doing. I actually really think he is pushing cinema and doing some really interesting things. There are a couple of films that I can revisit constantly, going all the way back to the 40s and 50s, just to learn about storytelling. All the way back to North by Northwest and Vertigo. There are so many films in the 70s that just were huge touchstones for me. Hunt for Red October, the Tony Scott, Ridley Scott sort of look is amazing. So the list goes on and on. I like to hop around genres from, pure fun, near magically perfect films like Back to the Future to, deeply flawed experiments that I still love and still appreciate, like, Blade Runner or, any genre film. You can find some little kernel in it that you learn something, but there are ones that I love to go back. Wrath of Khan, I absolutely love. There are so many movies I could just rattle on and on and on about, but I think the common thread is it's films that you remember little moments from. You remember character moments, you remember the big set pieces, you remember how you felt coming out of them. But the films that really resonated for me are ones that when I walked out of watching them, whether it was at home or at the theater, you felt like one of the characters. You felt like you were in that movie, and it just got under my skin. Those are what inspire me. And on a technical level, I love to just absorb films and learn about them. I recently just revisited Spartacus again. I was like, my God, Stanley Kubrick doing a studio film on this scale at 28 years old, and you realize how deftly he's handling Peter Ustinov and he's handling Laurence Olivier and all these different people, and he made a populist film. And I look at, he's using really intricate camera techniques in it. And so I find it all over the place.
Now, I have a question, since you brought up the Mad Max stuff as an influence.
Yes.
When you worked with Vernon Wells, did he ever talk about some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, or some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that he dealt with George Miller, producing the second one?
Yes, he absolutely has. He had, it was his first real film, and I believe George Miller's wife had seen him in a live show, and it was a live show where he had to get naked at some point. and his wife goes, "You need to look at this guy Vernon Wells for the feral, guy who is after Max." And so on her recommendation, apparently, according to Vernon, they brought him in, and it was a crash course. It was a master class before there was a master class in film acting and kinetics. And George Miller was, unfettered by any sort of studio consideration. So he hung it out there with all practicals, and he wanted to do this kinetic story. And Vernon's character had this great backstory. They all worked out together, and what was that life like that he was living? Why was he the way he was? And if he was the hero of his own story, what would Wes have really done? And according to Vernon, George was incredibly generous with giving little character moments to each person in it, that he was less concerned with, like, I need a star, I need this thing. He's like, no, you're the right person, you're the face I need, and that's who I want. And Mel was just coming up at that time, and Mel embodied that character so well. They were making a Western in the guise of a post-apocalyptic film. And Vernon's experience in that, it really kicked off his entire film career. And he was wholeheartedly into the kinetics, into the stunts. So for him, his collaboration with George, he still talks to him.
Now, did he ever mention his time working with Arnold Schwarzenegger on Commando?
Yes, he did.
Oh.
He did. He told me that they fired the guy that they had before him, and they asked him to come in. Now, this is his story. I hope I get it right. Otherwise, he'll kick my ass. But he was asked to come in and menace Arnie. And so he's like, oh, God, how am I going to, I come in. He said no to it. And then they called him again, and he said, nah, I don't want to do it. No, come in. All right, I'll come in. So he was a little pissed off and irritated by that time. So he goes on with his knife, and he goes off on Arnold, ties him up, and Arnold thinks he's going to freaking kill him, like in the audition. And by the end of it, he's like, I think we should get this guy. So then he went with the whole insane, this is Freddie Mercury on steroids approach on this thing, and he had a ball with it. And by the end, he and Arnold, as you can see in any behind the scene pictures, there was mutual respect there, because Arnold recognized, game recognizes game. Arnold recognized that Vernon was willing to go all the way to the edge. He was willing to, pretty much make him fear for his life, but he was a professional, and he was going to show up, and he was going to embody that character. And they had so much fun because in the 80s, you could flip off these great one-liners, and you could have fun. And he had some terrific one-liners, and he just had fun. And there's something about Vernon. He's nothing like his characters in the movie. He's the kindest. He's a thoughtful, smart guy. But when he turns on that switch and becomes the characters that he's playing, he taps into a deep vein of brutal, very primal characters and villains and intimidation. And I think he understands it incredibly well, because he's able to shed it when he's not the character. And he's able to be this kind, approachable man because he so deeply taps that vein of playing villains. He just has a great time.
Well, you brought up fun, which, a movie like Commando, it's so dumb that it is fun. I mean, a one-man military force going to South America, doing what he does. Yep. I think, so I brought up a minute ago about, budget and this and that. I think the smaller scale, fun, crazy shit is, kind of the future direction for a lot of stuff. I mean, you're going to have,
I hope
if
so.
streaming is truly the future, you can't have $200-300 million pictures anymore. But the fun craziness, I think if a lot of people in Hollywood could just pull it back, calm down, and realize that we make entertainment, and all we need to do is entertain as many people as possible, you'll have more movies like Commando in a good way. Because Commando, it's, let off some steam, Bennett, or all this other crap.
Yes. They were supposed to be fun. They weren't supposed to change your world. They were supposed to entertain you. You were supposed to get away from your life for a little bit and enjoy a fantasy that anybody could enjoy, of just going on an adventure and being that. And you're absolutely right. The scale of movies will have to change, especially if we can't do big premieres. And, it's gotten ridiculous. So, a couple of years ago, it was like, well, it's not a hit the first weekend, it's a bomb and it's it and it's gone. That sort of mentality, we have to have a long tail mentality. And what I mean by a long tail is things are digital now. They're not taking up physical space. So they're ones and zeros until you buy them. And so, for my film, for example, is new to anyone who just buys it now, because it's sitting on a digital shelf. You buy it and there it is. It didn't need to make its money on, October 12th, in 2018. And if it didn't open big, it's dead. And it's a new way of looking at it. The thing that we have to get more diversity of thought in, though, is in packaging and with agencies. There are 4 agencies that do, I think I was just reading this, 87% of all films and television packaging, the writing, the directing, what's going to be made and who's in it, are decided by only 4 companies now, with the rest of the percentage scattered among everybody else. And what that means is the agent who is representing you as a writer or representing you as an actor or whatever is negotiating with themselves to get you a price. And they're also setting a stylistic thing. So if CAA has a certain style, well, they're going to take a packaging fee. They're going to get they're going to represent you and get as low a price from you as possible, because they, through one of their affiliate producers, CAA is actually the ghost production company of that. So you're both judge and prosecution, because the agent is negotiating on your behalf with themselves, and they're deciding what gets made. So you've seen a huge contraction of who makes things and a huge explosion of where you can find them. And what I mean by that is there are 20 streaming services everywhere. You know, everything from Vudu and Fandango now all the way up to Hulu, Disney Plus, HBO Max. But the people that are providing the content are either the very small indies who have to scrape and, you know, scrounge to get money and hope to get it on the platform, or there are 4 agencies in the entire world that decide what's going to be made, what the content's going to be, who's going to be in it, who writes it, and who does it. And that's why you're seeing a sameness now, is that there are less choices. At the same time, there are more places than ever to find them.
People are loving this kind of stuff, by the way, Tom. I mean,
oh, well, thank you. I hope it's interesting. Yeah.
People like Andrew, he says, I love this guest. I'm learning so much. Our friend Juan R
Thank
says,
you.
I love this guest. He's so fascinating.
Thank you, Juan.
Matt Christinger says, we're all getting schooled and it's fun. So, I mean,
Thank you,
for those out there that are listening to this in the future, I know a ton of people want to watch the debates tonight, but there is entertainment that is not political out there for you folks. So if you're looking for fun, engaging, and I think educational, it has a negative connotation as equals boring, but we're all learning stuff about the stuff we love and why it was the way we love it. And hopefully there's someone out there that can take this information and figure out how to make the next great piece of entertainment out there. Because
yes, I try that every day. I wrote for 5 hours today on a Zoom call on a sort of Back to the Future. It's nothing to do with time travel or anything, but it captures that feeling, that Amblin feeling that is missing from so many things. I'm working on that now, and I really do hope that the doors swing wide for everybody, and I do mean everybody, regardless of, you know, race or where they're from or whatever, just to create good things that we want to see. There needs to be an explosion of good content that will then drive the marketplace rather than a brief coming from marketing. What happens now is they give you a date. They're like, all right, November 12th, we need something then. Now, here's how we're going to sell it. Now go make it. And the opposite needs to be true. It needs to be that artisans are making it, and they love what they're making because they have to make it. And then it comes out and you go, here's this great thing I made. You figure out how to sell it. Not everybody needs to love it. Just enough people need to love it. It's not, you know, $200 million. You got to swing for the fences. But hey, I made a really terrific film for $50 million, and I want people to see it. Go figure it out. That should be how it works. But the reverse is true. And I think we all look at this stuff because we love movies. We love comic books. We love animation. We love stories. It's what makes our life rich. It's how we learn about things. It's how, you know, you experience life through other people's eyes. That's why we're fans. That's why, I mean, I'm looking at my shelf here. I've got 700, you know, Blu-rays sitting here staring me in the face. I'm like, it reminds me every day. It's like, oh, I do this because I love this. I love the stories in here. I love the feeling you get when you're telling a story and somebody enjoys it. It's just like when you've made something and you kind of turn to the person next to you and you're enjoying it through their eyes for the first time because you already know what it is. You worked on it. You know, you've edited it all night. You're trying to get something out there and you look over and they're watching it for the first time. Well, you get that same rush again because you're experiencing it with them and you're like, hey, that's how I felt. Yeah, you like it? You know, and that's why you should be making it.
It's a great feeling. I mean, everybody out there that wants to make stuff, make it.
Yes,
you know, with the internet
absolutely
being what it is. I mean, we had we looked at some of your trailers earlier on, and you talked about Back to the Future multiple times. That is my favorite movie, hands down.
It's
and when you said
film.
it's like the tone of Back to the Future, not really time travel,
yep.
You sold me. I don't even care what it is. I will check it out when it comes out because
it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. And I do, like everyone out there, we have tons of people that want to start and do YouTube stuff. They want to make comics. They want to make movies. They want to make music. Just do it. And don't let anyone tell you you're not good enough or you can't do it or you suck because those people aren't doing it. So
give yourself permission. Have the courage of your conviction. And just, I am tired of being a waiter. I want to own the restaurant.
Yeah. I just wanted to throw that out there for everyone that's finding your talk educational, inspirational, and stuff. Like, take this and run with it, folks. You know, listen to this tonight. tomorrow, if you sit down, you said you wrote for 5 hours today.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have issues just getting started. So do you have any advice to the listeners? If, let's say somebody's out there that's an aspiring screenwriter or just wants to do what you did in today's landscape, how would you pitch that to them?
I have a piece of wisdom I wish someone had told me when I was much younger, which is I always wait for inspiration to write. Fortunately, it comes every day at 10 a.m. And what I mean by that is you got to sit down and start typing, because it's better to fix something that's crap than stare at a blank page where you've got nothing to improve, nothing to work on. You need to force that muscle so that inspiration has an opportunity to come to you because you discipline yourself. And if you discipline yourself as an artist, then you can start pushing the boundaries, learn the rules so you can break the rules, read and absorb everything. It's garbage in, garbage out. Put good stuff in, good stuff comes out. Make the things you want to make. But listen, if you're waiting for inspiration, make it happen every day at a certain time of day. And once you start thinking that way, you'll be surprised, because every day I wake up and sometimes I'm like, oh, you know, that cotton mouth, oh my God, I got a right feeling. Well, it's because I want to direct a movie or I want to act in a movie. And I get up and I'm like, and about 15 minutes in, I'm like, hey, and then this happens, and then this happens, and this happens. You look up and you've written 12 pages. And that's the muscle. And you have to exercise it just like any other muscle. The inspiration will not come if you don't create a place for it to enter, to come into your life. Everybody's life is busy. Everything's kind of, you're dealing with crap, you're stressed out, you work all day. Well, you know what? Give yourself permission to say, you know what, though, for an hour when I would sit here and just do whatever and just waste my time, that hour, I work on my dream project. I learn to edit. I learn, you know, I'm interested in telling stories. I learn to write. I start my thing. The beginning is the hardest thing.
Great advice right there, folks. Like I said, I was reading this from Rokins. He says, great advice for any writer. Tom, thank you for tonight, and I hope to see you again soon. He says,
thank you. My YouTube channel is called The Real Deal, R-E-E-L, The Real Deal with Tom Conkle. And it has my trailers up there. I think my first upload was 2006. I used to do sketches and stuff on there, so I would really appreciate any support. It's kind of a nice little time capsule of who I was. It's a place where I can do, you know, little silly things, or I can put up, you know, little things that I care about and want to kind of explore online. So anybody that wants to comment, I would love for you to check out the YouTube channel. It's The Real Deal with Tom Conkle.
So, folks, let's see what some of you guys are saying in the chat. Friend Bobby James says, do you find it exhausting in terms of some of the politics and the stuff? Bobby James, if you want to give me a clarification again, since you sent it a little earlier, I don't want to misinterpret your words, but it was during the time earlier in the show when we were talking about some of the climate and some of the censorship and the issues that affect entertainment today. So do you find that exhausting?
I do. That's when it feels like work, to be honest, because in an ideal scenario, you don't want to be, you know, walking on eggshells. You don't want to do it with people. You don't want to do it in your relationships. You know, what do they say? A mature relationship is energizing. An immature relationship is draining. Well, it's draining to sit around and justify or guess if your humor is going to offend somebody, even though it makes everyone laugh. It's terrible to sit and retrofit a character or value engineer a character because you're like, well, it should be a guy, but I'm going to make it a girl who just acts like a guy and does this because I want to sell this. All of those considerations, while legitimate business considerations, are draining, because we should all be able to write the stories that we want to write and we want to see. To turn around and tell me that I can't make or watch Master and Commander because it's a bunch of dudes, it's about male friendship, is as ridiculous as saying a woman could not enjoy a rom-com like you know, Diane Keaton and other characters. If she wants to make that, make it and create an environment where it can be good and she can make the best film. A man could make that film, or there shouldn't be this sort of consideration of, well, these are the things that I can say and I can't say, and I do that. Yes, you should have a frame around your art. You shouldn't just like go all over the wall with it. The worst things in the world are where people surround themselves with yes people, and no one keeps them inside the lines. They don't color inside the lines. They don't have a frame. I think, when you have a limitation of budget, you have a limitation of time, but a limitation of ideas is a different thing. And applying the aesthetic of, well, there's some things you shouldn't do, or you shouldn't do, the old school type films. That's out. That's old. You don't want to do that. Well, that's self-limiting, and that's creating an editorial phase before you really should be editing. You should be writing everything you want to see, and then genius is knowing what to leave out and what to take out of what you're doing. Kill your babies. When you're creating something, you have to kill your babies. You love them all like babies, and then I go, you got to die because this other idea is good, and if I have these other two ideas, it diminishes you. Well, if I'm already going, well, yeah, but I got to take that out because that might offend, Inuit.
Well, you were like saying Jip earlier. Yeah, it's like, who would think,
that is not creatively energizing. What is energizing is saying, look, you got $150,000. You get to make a movie. Go. Now that's energizing with a limitation, but it's not me going, oh, I've got $150 million, but I don't want to spend it this way or this way. No, you pick your battles. And I think creatively, self-censorship, certainly don't do something just to be mean or to shock somebody, or it's stupid. It's just put in there to offend people. But by the same token, getting offended by something that's satirical because you completely missed the point is a very dangerous thing, because it just drains you. You don't want to create.
So speaking of that, when you worked with John Cleese, he's a legend.
He's great.
There really isn't enough nice things to say about him or his accomplishments or all this stuff. He's, one of the world-class comedians. The Faulty Tower stuff.
Yeah.
Was that before or after you had worked with him? The pushback of it being offensive by today's standards.
It just happened. The Faulty Tower stuff is just
they did that recently.
Recently.
Yeah,
it's considered a classic, right, Mecca? I mean, it's been a classic for 40 years, and his point is completely valid in that contextualizing something is everything. So if his character even displayed a racist thing towards Manuel, he's like beating around doing. People did that, and people are like that, and he's not a likable character as Basil Fawlty, but also it's funny. And the actor doing it didn't have a problem with it. No one held the gun to his head and said, I need you to stand here, Manuel, and do this or whatever. He did it. Or if he had a weird reaction to another character, it was a female character or a black character or something, that's Basil, and it's humor, and we have to contextualize it. He didn't do it to hurt someone in real life. He did it to create a comic situation in a desperate man who is wholly unlikable, which is why we love him. And if you start doing that, you're doing exactly what we all laughed at about Life of Brian, which was the people protesting Life of Brian, having not seen Life of Brian, saying it's making fun of people that follow religion.
They did the same thing to Dogma and a few other movies over the years. Yeah,
you're right,
it's
Tom.
Insane.
You're absolutely right. And so, in summary, working with somebody like Cleese, it was amazing writing, watching the writing with him, running sketches with him, because, I used to do sketch comedy live on stage. I did it for 11 years. We toured around and I did it. And I used to be part of a British comedy troupe called Dave and Tom. And we were a fake British comedy duo. And that's what got me the gig, is that a French producer that I had done a thing go, I know a guy who's like a British comedian like Michael Palin or sort of like you ought to do the show with him. And that's how I got the gig.
It's funny you say that, because you want to know something, Tom? This is funny because we've talked quite a bit since we first met now, so I think I'm comfortable enough saying this. Before I actually talked to you, the only clip I saw of you offhand that I knew of, because I seeked it out, was the one with you and John Cleese. So I thought you were British. So when you first came on, so when you first came on and you're like talking all like American, like, wait, is this the right guy? What? Is this his handler, or is this the wait?
I work as a Brit as much as I do as an American, and I was a Brit on that shoot the entire time. We had a German director, but I was doing British comedy as a Brit. I used to tour as a Brit. Half of my voiceover work is a Brit. I really resonate with that culture, and I've done the Edinburgh Fringe, and I've done all these different things. But I love British humor. But yes, you're right. You're probably like, wait a second, because I've had people go, now wait, is that your voice? And the funniest thing that ever happened is I was in Edinburgh, and I did a British comedy show with a British sketch troupe. So I'm up there, I'm like, okay, here's what we're going to do now, and I do the whole thing. And as I'm leaving the theater, I had been in Scotland a day. And this little Scottish lady comes up and she's like, oh, I'm sorry, do you know which way is the, I want to get down to Princess Street. Do you know the way? And I go, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know. And she's like, oh, God, don't do American accents. You suck.
That's hilarious. But no,
To the Brits.
I just got to tell our audience, because, like, I mean, you're telling some great, amazing stories. But just so you guys know, Tom has been in things like Arrested Development, The Office, Community, just to name a few things. I mean, you've been in so much television, it's insane. So chances are you've seen this man in something at some point, or heard his voice.
I'm usually that guy when you're in the swimming pool, comes up to me, and they usually go, do you work in my office? Or have I met you before? And I'll be like, was I in an office? And he goes, yeah. Was I on television? Yeah. And I go, I can't see you the other direction. You probably saw me. That happened to me in a luau line in Hawaii. A guy came up to me and he's like, you work in my office, don't you? And I go, no. And he goes, well, I've seen you on something. I said, I didn't see you. And he's like, well, anyway, here's what you did in the show. And I'm like, I know what I did in the show. I'm in
people are so funny because every interaction, like, okay, I've never had interactions like that, but I can understand because all these things are so personal to people. They see you as one thing. Do you still find that humorous, or do you ever find it frustrating where people might think of you as just like that guy from that episode of The Office, and you're like, I have this whole variety of things that I've done?
It's super hard. You asked a really good question there. Perception and tone is everything. In fact, I modified pitching now to tell genre first. Like, you want to tell people this is a comedy, or this is a drama, this is an action thing. Because what happened was I turned in something. Well, two things happened. I turned in one piece of writing that was a serious sci-fi, and it was somebody that knew me from doing the Monty Python style humor. And about 20 pages in, I get a call from him at Universal, and he's like, Tom, I'm reading this. I mean, this isn't funny. And he's like, I don't, what's up with it? I'm like, it's not supposed to be. He's like, I was reading it with your voice, like your comedy voice, and it was completely freaking me out, because I wrote it as this John Carpenter thing in a contained space with everybody. He's like, I'm waiting to laugh, and I feel dirty that I didn't laugh, And I was like, it's not supposed to be. And by the same token, the best, to me, some of the best dramatic actors know comedy and do comedy and understand timing. So even when I do something like Trouble Is My Business, or I did an episode of this show called Intelligence, where I was a serious character, there is a brief time of people that know me. If they know me comedically, there's a, wait for it. Wait, he isn't, wait a minute. No. And there's that moment where they're like, you're not funny in this, and you have to wonder, I'm like, do you mean you don't like it? Or no, they're just, I'm not used to you being so evil, or I'm not used to you being serious or romantic, like the love scene in Trouble. People are like, wait a second, that's the dude from Scooby Doo, so there's a very different feel. But to me, a true artist is a chameleon. You shouldn't know exactly what I am or what I do. I love to surprise. I love to kind of go, yeah, right now I'm an evil mortician, and before you were laughing at me because I was a clown, and I think to really embrace it is how I finally came to peace with it, that some people well-meaningly will laugh and then realize, no, wait, this is okay, wait, this is serious. And by the same token, people that know some of my later work where I've gotten way more serious, they'll be like, you did comedy? Like, you're so serious,
Well, and not to shift. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, not to shift gears here, but a kind of a serious question with this whole thing going on right now and everything going on. I feel like it's actors like you, per se, who are, like character actors and people who aren't necessarily an Angelina Jolie or a Will Smith, who are probably hurting the most right now.
Right.
How do you feel going forward? I mean, you lucky enough are doing your own thing, but a lot of other actors aren't. You know, they can't even bust tables right now, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So like, how do you think a lot of people are going to come out of this? How do you think things are going to be different on the other side once we do finally find a solution?
Terrific question. The thing that's happening with the medium scaled budget is what's happening to the medium scale actor, the middle actor. The middle class actor is shrinking. The middle class film is shrinking. The middle class is shrinking. It's a mirror. A guy like me, who's a jobbing actor, who's a jobbing director. I'm not David Fincher. I'm not, Tom Hanks, but this is what I do for a living. I don't have another job. What I've seen is a contraction of the availability of parts for a guy like me, but more importantly, that middle ground is shrinking, and the resources within that place, like even Matt Damon would have trouble getting a middle ground $30 million drama off the ground right now, because there is no middle ground. You're either coming in with the ultra low budget, found footage thing that hopefully takes off, or you're making a $250 million franchise movie. There is no space now for what used to be the experiment that would become, a franchise, would become, Terminator's what? The budget's like $11 million, the first one. You look at the budgets on some of these films, and you go, oh, that was the feeding ground. That's what created a new wave of people. And now it's either very proven people or people willing to work for peanuts. And because I do this for a living, I need to make a living wage. And what's happened is there's this stranglehold on the middle class artist that you're finding it more difficult for your guild to get health care because they keep changing the amount of money you need to make. You're seeing less opportunities out of the gate to get cast, because as I was saying before, there's 4 big agencies that package in their people with that. And they're like, look, we're all in. We're making a Netflix series. It's all CAA clients. We're negotiating all of their roles. We're negotiating all the writers. Well, a guy like me, if I'm not at CAA, it doesn't matter how good I am. I'm not getting in.
Yeah, I see that as being a problem. Now, going forward, you see like people like you who actually have a passion for this, who aren't just doing it, for a quick buck or, for the glamour of it all or whatever. Now, I feel like those are the type of people that are probably going to rise above a lot of this in the end. And do you see a lot more movies like Bill and Ted going forward, where it's, very, very low level, middle of the road? A lot of people put in a lot of effort into it just to get it made. And like you said, like nobody got paid making that movie.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, everybody's an executive producer because they put their money back into the movie. Actually,
Yes,
so
go
you see a
figure.
lot.
Yeah. They
see
wanted
a lot
to
of
see
that
the
going
movie.
forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think going forward, people like me, I think I eventually will survive, because I do have the courage to kind of keep going. I really honestly believe I have something to say. I want to make other people money. I would love to be on great projects and bring whatever I can bring to those projects and make money for them and make them have an opportunity, and I get to be creative. I would love to have my ideal. Everyone goes, well, Tom, what's your ideal? I'm like, I want an idea on Monday, and I want to be able to be executing it on Friday, to at least be getting it started, going, get in production, get my team together. Let's make this thing. That's the dream. And I think as we emerge from this turmoil, it could happen. And I think the way it will happen is there's a reckoning that needs to happen, where we have been living on the kind of it's basically like credit in the US. It's like you live way past your means. They're borrowing from the reason there are no effects houses left in LA is that every effects house had to borrow money from all their other projects to finish the project they had. They went into crushing debt, then couldn't pay their artists, and then they went out of business. And that mentality that we must make more profit every year, Disney's like, well, executive only made 31 million this year. And it's like, that's per year. I could live on 30 million
for the rest of your life. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, why don't we just say, look, there's enough. You make 2 million, you're good. And then with that additional money, pour it into the people that are wanting to create great stuff for you, that will create wealth for you, that will be the people that sit there and write and are passionate, and they're just like all of us. We are the audience, and I want to create stuff. That's what got me into it. But as a person who's somewhat on the outside, the problem is access, and the problem is right now it's swing for the fence. It's got to be a huge runaway hit and make 300 million, or you basically put it on your credit card, and neither of those is a business plan.
Right, and that's why I brought up Bill and Ted, because I think that's where we get into this feasible ground. I agree. You have people that are willing to not take that big payday like you're talking about, but in the end, it probably paid off quite a bit for them. Like, we don't have any solid numbers, but shit, the movie was number one for 3-4 weeks in a row, plus the trilogy was bouncing around the charts. So,
I mean, they're getting residuals off the trilogy, and let's face it, 3 years from now, somebody new can pull that thing down off the digital shelf and enjoy it. It was a movie they wanted to make. They're like, no big deal. There was no pretension to it. You pull it down, you watch it, you enjoy it. Some people get paid, and we move on. That's the way it's supposed to be. But
yeah, $25 million budget, and they've made what, probably 3 times that back by now?
Exactly. That's terrific. That is such a win for them. And for a middle-class actor like me, or a middle-class director, writer like me, I want that opportunity. I've got 10 stories. I've got a slate of films that if somebody would pony up, you guys would probably enjoy it. But the problem is getting through the gatekeepers and the packaging, and there's this kind of weird mentality of like, well, why does it cost so little? Or why is your film only $10 million? I've actually gotten that as an objection. I'm like, well, because I can make it for that and it'll be great. And it's like, yeah, but we'd feel better if it's 100. I'm like, fine, it's 100. Well, you've never made 100. You can't make 100.
Well, that's exactly what made Halloween. Remember, that's like same exact story, because John Carpenter thought he was lowballing them, and who was it? Mustafa Akkad's like, that's too little. Like, that can't be real. He can't do it for that much.
You can't do that. Yeah, why is it so little? And then it turns out to be Halloween. It's like, yeah, it doesn't cost anything for a good idea.
No, exactly. Or Clerks, another great example, but that was on a credit card, but still, like, and then I just saw that Sacha Baron Cohen made a Borat movie in secret. I'm sure he produced that all by himself, and he just sold it to Amazon. I'm sure, like, that's the kind of thing you'd love to find, that kind of a like, you just got to find the right thing, and there's so many people out here, and I see like the Phantom Menace being another big part of that push. And do you see like maybe crowdfunding, something like that, kind of being a big part of the future too?
I think it could be. I actually, on last Saturday, I shot a crowdfunding video for something that's going to be up on Indiegogo. It's actually a 40s story called The Promise. And it's all about getting people to buy the ticket when you need it, which is while you're making it, rather than at the end, after you've spent all this money, and then asking for them to enroll in the project. And with something like that, everybody on it is there because they want to be. They're passionate. It's a great story set in World War II. It's about love. It's about a guy escaping after being shot down. We can make that. I can make it in-house. I have visual effects in-house. I have all of that. I'm not farming it out to third parties. If somebody wants to crowdfund now, as long as people have discretionary money, which the economy needs to turn around a little bit, I think you can vote with your pocketbook. You can say, you know what, I will buy the ticket now while you're making this thing. I'll be part of the production. I will be a valued member of it. We're building a team, and the audience is part of the conversation. It's not, people make the mistake. I always make this joke. I'm like, crowdfunding should not be like you're gathered around a bonfire and someone goes, it was a dark and stormy night. And then what happened? And then you point at the audience is like, look, your fucking job is to make the story and tell me it. Just tell me the story. It's not, it's a dark and stormy night. Then what happened? It's, we're making a dark and stormy night story. We want you to enroll in it now, be part of it, have a dialogue with us. We have strong ideas. We're going to create the story that we want to tell, and we have a feeling you'll agree with us. But the crowdfunding comes in because otherwise we're beholden to either equity, investment, credit, or we go to a studio, we beg and borrow, we spend years looking for the money to do it. It's a shorthand way of going, look, are you interested in buying a ticket to this thing while we're making it?
And we've already seen it a little bit with Kevin Smith's done it a few times, and a few other filmmakers have. Now, if this thing starts getting bigger like that, and you start seeing some big successes, like let's just say for, you know, theoretically, like your horror movie just happens to take off and stuff like that, and stuff like, you know, smaller projects, something like that happens. You know, like, do you think the studios will start to get scared of the crowdfunding thing, and how do you think they'd react to that?
I bet there'll be an examination from the Securities and Exchange Commission. I'm sure that big business will not appreciate the audience. You know, that's what I love about the Phantom Menace, is that I appreciate this attitude, this asking of the people that are creating for you, please create something that is not just your agenda-driven stuff that's deconstructing what I love, but then telling me I'm wrong for not loving it. I think crowdfunding is a way to circumvent it for a very important reason. You are buying into a project you're part of, but the artist is saying, I value your participation. And a studio is frightened because it prevents one-way messaging. You can't say, I want to enroll you in this project, but shut up. I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to make what's good for you. You have to go, I'm making this. Are you interested in it? Because if you are, I have the skills to make it. I simply need you to buy the ticket now or be part of it now. And a studio, that's the antithesis of a studio, or let's face it, we're not talking about studios. We're talking about corporations that don't know much about making movies. They know they make some money, but the people that make the movies very rarely participate in the profit from the movie. The corporation does. So the corporation is not going to be very interested in a dialogue between audience and art, because it cuts them out of the equation. If an artist could self-distribute, and I could program directly to you guys, and you guys go, hey, I dig what you're doing. I love Trouble Is My Business. I'll drop $5 on it. Why do I need the studio?
Well, and we're getting there, and I think that's and I know, Jeff, we have a lot of super chats to probably get to, and I want to get to that point.
Yeah,
too.
But I mean, this is really interesting, though.
Yeah, this is good shit.
I'm enjoying everything I'm hearing. So yeah, we'll get to the super chats. Everyone's cool. You know, our friend, the one that was on the screen for the longest time, Legalize Adulthood, I believe his name was, is enjoying this. So
yeah, but there is one question I wanted to bring to the table. I know, and if you guys want to get more depth into this, we did talk to Tom a lot about this on Midnight's Edge, and that was our main conversation was about. But I see a few people bring it up already. I'm going to ask you this a little bit more directly, since you have a little more time to sink in, since they've come out or they've talked about it. How do you think the Oscar rules are going to affect everything going across the board? There've already been talks that Universal's taking on this kind of a rhetoric or draconian rules, as well as, Bad Robot's already put out their memorandum that they're going to do something similar. Do you feel like everybody's going to follow along? And do you think this is going to hurt the independent industry going forward from getting any kind of notice from the Academy or other awards, considering the other awards will probably follow suit as well?
Yeah, you know what? Ironically, what I think it's going to do is either people are going to make separate divisions where it's Oscar bait or Oscar intended movies, which will have a certain agenda and brief. A corporate brief will come down. It's like, we want an Oscar. I want, a guy in a wheelchair, a gay guy, a woman, and I want that, and I want to go after that, and that will be now divorced from popular entertainment. And it's been coming a long time. We've had this conversation before. The popular movies, or the movies that aren't good for you, very rarely win an Oscar. It's the ones that they think need to be elevated because they're going to be good for you. It's like, no, you shouldn't like The Matrix. You should like Shakespeare in Love. That's Shakespeare. And one is entirely different from the other, each equally valid. It's as absurd as saying Dr. Strangelove as a comedy is not as valid as Oliver is as a musical. And yet, Oliver might win the Oscar because it's considered important or it's good for you, and the other one's just a comedy.
But which one lived on longer? That's the real question.
Yeah, and it's like,
sorry, not to derail it, but yeah.
Yeah. And 40 years later, which movie you're more likely to watch? And of course, even now, which movies are you more likely to watch? The movies that aren't considered Oscar material are just as valid. To answer your question, yes, there's going to be huge virtue signaling. There's going to be huge concessions made for those studios that see some value in winning an Oscar. But what I think a lot of people, and myself included, are going to do is like, screw it. I'm never going to get an Oscar anyway. I'm going to make the movie I want. Sometimes it's going to be, you know, a black guy that I want to work with. It might be an Asian woman I want to work with who's fantastic. I'm never once going to go, you know, you'd be great for this, and I really want an Oscar, so let's change her to, you know, an Eskimo, and let's have this, and not, that's never going to happen for me, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, I guess I'm not going to get an Oscar. But I think that's fine. I think you know, Pandora's box is open. The truth of it is, a bunch of terrific, talented Asian people can grab a 4K camera and some sound equipment and make an amazing movie. They don't need Hollywood's permission anymore. And for a guy like me who loves genre films, I'm going to make science fiction movies. I'm going to make action movies. I'm going to make comedies. I'm going to do what I want to make. And if those aren't considered important or well-crafted or whatever, or you look down your nose at them, I don't care. So you can change the brief all you want, and all it does is make it rare air. I think the dwindling numbers of people watching the Oscars means that really what people enjoy is divorced from what's considered quote-unquote good. I think a lot of good things win Oscars, but do they resonate with people? Isn't that equally important, that you enjoy it or that you seek it out? You know, there's nothing less valid about the movie that you'd rather watch with a bunch of your friends and pop in and watch for the 50th time than the movie that just, you know, guts you and wins the Oscar, but you just never want to see the thing again because you're gutted. You know, both are valid.
No, and I agree 100%. But my concern is that it's going to seep into everything else like a poison. It's going to just, every studio is going to take on the rules, and then, like I said, you know, even, you know, some independent people like you who may not necessarily be gunning for an Oscar. There's other independent projects like the one you just brought up, Parasite, where getting the Oscar is like kind of
it's everything.
You know, yeah.
And what are the rules on that? Like, I love Parasite, and it won, but it's interesting. It won foreign film and best film. So what are the rules there? It's a foreign film and it can win best film. It doesn't have any black people in it. It doesn't really have a diversity theme, so it couldn't win, right?
Right. By those metrics they've introduced, yeah. I mean, there was a list from some website that listed all the Oscar winners that wouldn't have won under this new guise. And they
tried to say that was bullshit, but it's like, no, really. If you're going to stick to these rules, then no.
Yeah. Good is good. Good is good everywhere. What I want to eliminate are any barriers or banning or preventing someone from making it. That's stupid. We should never have done that. We shouldn't do that. But by the same token, you know, suddenly saying, well, you know, white middle-aged guy, that's the problem. If we keep him out, it's exactly like we were talking about where they elevate female characters by knocking and dumbing down everyone around it. Well, knocking out a guy like me who struggles just like anybody else, trying to get my stuff made, for me to be dismissed out of hand because of what I look like or who I am or what age I am is just as bad. It's just as wrong. And if we truly want to get to that kind of ideal sweet spot where it's like, yeah, if it's good, it has merit, it's going to go on, we need to eliminate all of those sort of briefs, all of those mandates that come down, because as good as they make you feel, where it's like, you'd rather just have a hand up, you know, than just giving a handout. You know, it's like, okay, well, here's your handout. Good for you. You know, we made that joke. It's like best achievement by a white player in the NBA. It's like, are you freaking kidding me? You know, you shouldn't have that. It should be the best player in the NBA.
Absolutely. And that brings me back to one last question before we get back to the super chats, Jeff.
Sure.
Like, when did you see this backwards turn in Hollywood? Because, like, we brought this up before, and I know we talked about this when you were on with us before, and I've brought the point up at nausea already. Like, we already had this turn, like, with the civil rights movement and the feminist movement. We came out of the 70s, and we know, you know, we started with, you know, exploitation and black exploitation films, but by the time you got to the 80s, you know, it's funny that Coming to America wasn't considered a black film until recent years.
Yeah, I never.
John Landis even made points to that. Yeah, Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even John Landis made a point to that. It's like, even though it's entirely made up of black actors throughout the cast,
Right.
it was never really referred to as a black film or a black comedy. It was just a comedy. And now all of a sudden in recent years, it's heralded as this big black comedy. I was like, but that was never a big deal before. And I'm just using that as one example. There's a million examples we've brought up here where it's just like Hollywood used to be ahead of the curve. What the fuck happened? Because I think I brought this up too on Midnight's Edge. When we were talking to you on Midnight's Edge, like I have this other podcast I do on another channel, According to Christie, where we go through our top 10 movies of the year, and we have this ongoing joke where it's like, that movie doesn't exist. That movie doesn't exist because it has a strong female character, a gay character in it, a black lead, what have you. It never fails at 3 or 4 times every single show. We have to make that joke. It's almost gotten sickening that it's like, where did Hollywood lose its way? I mean, and you've been in the business, I think, long enough that I got to ask you, how long ago do you think this happened, or what happened? What the hell is going on here?
Honestly, I just thought of this now, so forgive me for an unformed idea, but the idea of identity and identity politics, I feel like now that I'm thinking about the timeline, it almost exactly corresponds with the rise of social media, the rise of the internet giving voice in a bad way to the mob, but also you're able to create an identity, often an anonymous identity, but it's given equal weight to someone who is informed. And I almost think that artists started feeling less empowered in general when social media came in. You could, the arbiters of taste began to think, well, let's listen to the crowd and look at their identity. And social media, you can kill a film on Twitter now right away, and you could not even have seen the film. All you have to do is get the right hashtags and the right amount of outrage. I wonder if, we're always at our worst when we operate out of fear. And I wonder if in the last 6 to 8 years, we have not become more fearful of who we are, where the idea is coming from. Are we being politically correct? Make sure not to piss anybody off. I want to be heard. My voice is equally valid. All of these kinds of things without the discipline that should have come with the technology. We've made everybody Roger Ebert with a huge reading following. Anybody can get on Twitter and give their opinion about a film. But also that person always, like we were joking before, it's like, yes, but speaking as a Mexican American, I feel that this is, and it's like, what?
Why should that matter? Yeah.
Yeah. And that spreads much faster now with technology than it would have 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we had the communal experience of all watching the same thing some night. If a comedian came on and he killed on a late night show, most of the population that was up watching TV saw it. So the next day you'd all get together and you had the communal experience of just saying, wow, did you see the first time Eddie Murphy appeared on, he was amazing, and do all this. Now everyone is narrowcast in their own little world, and you're watching your show and I'm watching my show and I'm listening to my music and you're listening to your music. And the minute I decide that I'm offended by what you're doing or what you're listening to or what you're thinking or what's being created, that voice, that echo chamber gets louder and louder and louder. And companies and corporations that create the stories we listen to are incorrectly listening to that echo chamber. They're listening to or demonizing the audience. And they're either over responding to what they think people want, or worse, they're blaming people for not wanting what they're giving them. And so what's broken down is the dialogue that used to happen between the expectation that we would create something for an audience, they would enjoy it, you'd get feedback, and sometimes you fail spectacularly, and you're like, that was a piece of crap, but I learned something, by doing it badly. And I move on. Well, now it lives on forever online. Now in social media, people can get outraged. And I feel like the answer to your question is the shift happened when we went from being a polite society that had rules. You wouldn't say something to someone's face that you would say online. Well, that also happened in storytelling. It's what happened in entertainment at the same time. The technology has exceeded our social and our creative toolkit that we have to create it. And now we're in this chaos. And stuff will break through and there'll be something that's great and a phenomenon, but it goes on such a fast cycle that, you know, frankly, I'm surprised, you know, Mandalorian hasn't had a backlash yet. You know, it's like, well, it's been too long between seasons. Now we hate this show. You know, it's like we loved it before.
Well, it does get a little bit of backlash in certain areas. But the thing with Mandalorian that's different from the other Star Wars stuff, though, is it's more about the characters and the story, not the politics. But sorry.
Exactly.
Go ahead,
and
finish.
by keeping the politics out of it and just making a great story, that's why it's my favorite thing that Disney's produced, but it's produced despite the system, not because of the system. And I think what you're looking for, honestly, is there is a intersection where we changed as a society globally, not just America, but we changed as a society, became a harsher society. But we also have less and less choices, you know, like I was saying before about companies, agencies, people that are creating the content. And that's all driven by the immediacy of social media, the immediacy of we can be nasty at the speed of light, but also you can have an artist who creates, has unprecedented access to his audience and call them all a bunch of idiots. You know, it's like, you don't like my thing, I hate you. And I don't care if you like my thing. If you had done that in the 50s or 60s, you'd be over. You would be done. And you couldn't do it because there was no way you could reach everybody. People just enjoyed your stuff or didn't enjoy it. And that was the dialogue. They moved on. So I really feel like we're in that shifting change. And certainly you can disagree with me, but this was an idea when you asked the question. I thought, yeah, what did change? Because we had made so much progress. We were really in a golden period. Why do we seem to be going backwards?
Now, what about counterculture? Because you have every generation, era, whatever you want, however you want to define it, there's always a counterculture, a pushback to what, you know, the mainstream is. Outside of, you know, the fandom menace community, what do you think the big pushback will be that actually sees change on a different scale?
Well, I think you make a great example. I mean, you're the Phantom Menace network of people, or the people that are creating on YouTube, the people that are creating on these digital platforms, and they're just hanging it out there. That is the counterculture. Counterculture is happening quietly. Counterculture is everything from a meme that's subversive, that calls out the hypocrisy, that calls out, you know, social justice or what political correctness. It's all the little pokes underneath the fabric that people are making. The counterculture is happening right now quietly underneath all of this. It's happening on these channels. It's happening in podcasts. It's happening everywhere where there's an unspoken, like when I found you guys, I was like, wow, here are people like Mecca and like Tom and like you that think like me, that point out, you know, it's like, what the heck is going on with Hollywood? Why all the social justice warriors? Why all the messaging, all the heavy-handed stuff? Well, when you find your people, we're a little pocket of counterculture ourselves, and we have access through technology. I think the revolution is kind of happening underneath it, but we're, you know, let's face it, we're up against a very well-financed machine that makes these a very large product. They have access to advertising we don't have. There's a lot of ground to cover before we really put a dent. But this is where the new creative stuff is going to come from. It's from people who are unfettered by corporate considerations, who are unfettered by you know, the current cancel culture, social justice, walking on eggshells, and they're just like, you know what, I'm just going to make great stuff. And there might be some naughty stuff in there. There might be some subversive stuff, but that's where the next Monty Pythons are going to come from. That's where the next Steven Spielbergs are going to come from. Those are the people that are just like, you know what, I'm going to learn my craft, discipline myself, and make it, and the good stuff will rise somehow because I have direct access. If I made a movie now, I'd very seriously consider self-distributing it. My last film was with a distributor, and I think I could do as good a job if I research it, in placing it, and finding the people, and getting access, and having a higher percentage of, if it succeeds, great, I make more money, but also you don't need that middleman anymore.
What makes me personally excited to hear that, because I'm going to find more stuff to watch. Yes, I can create it too, and I have, but I don't know about you guys, but when you sit down, you mentioned 750 Blu-rays earlier, Tom?
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing more exciting. Like when you get, like, I got Beetlejuice the other day, like the box
Yeah.
set. There's nothing more exciting to get one of my favorite movies and to know it's here. It's my thing to watch. It just makes me, it's excited.
Yes.
Today, there's so much, like you brought up the Endgame thing. Endgame was fun. I didn't like it as much as other people, but I want to be able to sit down and get all the stuff I like, new good things constantly flowing, because you can tell people in the fandom menace, we're tired of old Star Trek stuff getting rehashed. Star Wars is getting long in the tooth. Like, as just a consumer, yes, I get to create stuff and I'm removing myself because just for the sake of this argument, but like, it's so nice and exciting to know there's a future for entertainment, because a lot of shit feels hopeless. Not to, make it all sound as crazy as it is, to self-aggrandize or anything like that. But like, we watch stuff, and like this pandemic, it makes you realize a couple things: how useless the big celebrity is, but it also makes you realize how important the content you consume really is. So for all the garbage they do over at Netflix, but then there's good stuff over here on YouTube, or there's good stuff on Indiegogo with the comics, like Ethan's and stuff like that, and ours. Like, it's exciting, and my word to anyone out there is like, just wait. It's going to get better. And hearing it from you actually makes me feel a little better too, because it's like, Jesse and I will talk about, The Boys is great, but that's only 8 episodes or 8 weeks out of the year, and then it's a bunch of crap for the other 46.
Yeah, it's a lot of grim, dark crap. Yeah. And the sense of fun is missing. And what you're describing is we are the people that love these stories. The idea of getting Beetlejuice is the exact same feeling someone had 200 years ago when they had a great book they loved and they added it to their library, and you'd revisit it every couple of years. It stays the same, but you're different. So when you visit it, you get different things from it. You appreciate new things. Something becomes art when you can keep visiting it, and you see new things about yourself, new things about it every time you do. These movies sit on my shelf because I know I might not look at them for a year or 2 or 3 years, but then I visit them again. It feels like Christmas, because you're like, oh my God, I loved this movie. And you put it back in and you appreciate it on another level, and it inspires you, and you remember why you loved it. And I do think we're turning a corner where we're just going to be fed up with bad reboots, deconstruction, a cynical kind of approach to the properties that we've loved forever. It breaks my heart to see Star Trek made by people that don't like Star Trek, or that it's being destroyed. The Federation is not the enemy. It was supposed to be about hope. It's supposed to be about exploration.
Right.
Star Wars was supposed to be an epic myth. But at its heart, it's supposed to be a serial that is exciting, with great fun characters having an adventure in a fantasy setting. What's wrong with that? Why is it so hard in the alchemy to come up with new stuff that actually makes us feel that way? If you could do it before, you can do it again. What's happened is we're stewing in our own juices here, and they're going, well, yeah, but that's been done. Maybe we can destroy it somehow, or deconstruct it, or let's just sort of manufacture it. I don't know why it was good, but I know if I put that name on it, it's going to, I'm scared to death of the Lord of the Rings thing coming out, because they're like, are they going to make it into Game of Thrones, and completely miss the point? And it's already been done really well. So I'm not quite sure an almost as good version is called for, particularly at $100 million. We're going to do $100 million to make something almost as good as the original. Makes no sense to me. It's like they recently they remade Ben-Hur a few years ago, and I thought, okay, now what is the point? Anyone that likes Ben-Hur owns it on Blu-ray, has it, but to make a less good version of it makes no sense, and it cost triple what the original did. And tell a new story. Look at a library. There are books there with hundreds, thousands, millions of stories that haven't been touched. There are screenwriters like me that beg to go into a pitch and not have someone go, we own The Little Rascals. Do you think you can do something with that? No, I have an original script I worked on for 2 years. I think it would be great. It's Island in the Stars. It's like the way you felt when you read those George Pal. You saw George Pal and Jules Verne. Let me make that. Oh no, that's not off brand. We know we have Little Rascals. You know, and that's where the conversation goes, fine, I'll do Little Rascal so you'll give me money to do what I want to do.
Now, what are some of the other crazy things that have been said to you in like pitch meetings or behind the scenes stuff that you can share? Because there's that famous story. They wanted to make a Harriet Tubman movie in the 90s, and one exec said, why don't we get Julia Roberts to play Harriet Tubman? And like, no one knew why that was just so batshit crazy. Like, do you have any good stories about that?
Oh boy, do I have good stories. One that comes to mind, there's usually a development lady in a very thick sweater who's very cold, who always comes in, and she wants me to bring something sophisticated. I want, you know, I want to do something great. I want to push some boundaries, bring in your A game. And I will do that. I will put together a pitch deck, pitch package for something that's challenging. It's about something. It is an original piece, and it's a little complex, but certainly can be done. And about halfway through every one of these pitches and conversations, that person in the fuzzy sweater will be like, hold on. Okay, feed me like I'm 4. Tell me what. So you want complex, you want sophisticated stuff, but you want me to feed you like you're 4. Okay, hang on. And then you have to think about how you're doing, and you go, it is a freaking miracle that anything good gets through. It's an accident of fate that either, you know, they don't know what they're onto and it sneaks through. I've literally had pitch meetings where no one looked up from their computer. They were all involved in doing, you know, whatever they're doing on their computer, and you're sitting there and you're throwing down your A game. And about halfway through, I actually started to loosen my belt as if to take my trousers down, and I had my boxers exposed before anyone noticed that I was undressing in front of them.
Wow.
Yeah. And now these are the people that decide. Art is people that love art fighting with people that love money.
Right.
And the absurdity comes out in the very process of pitching, because it is an inefficient way to get money. It's an inefficient way to convey passion. An elevator pitch, yeah, you absolutely want an elevator pitch. It's like, okay, it's about a detective. One of the sisters wants to kill him. The other one falls in love with him. Great. Tell me more. But does that really encapsulate the shading, the idiosyncrasies? No, they don't care about it. They don't even read a script anymore. They read an outline, or they look at casting. And the absurd things. Okay, I went to the American film market one time, which is a market for independent films that, you know, the scale $1 million would be a lot for something like this. And I went in with a terrific film project. It was fully developed. I had the art direction. I'd hired a terrific artist to do it. I sat down with them, and about halfway through the conversation, he's like, look, you know, if you had like a Daniel Craig or a Harrison Ford, I could probably get this movie made. And I said, if I had Daniel Craig or Harrison Ford, would I be at the AFM? I would be on the lot trying to do this. You are a guy who sells Yugos, who tells me it would be easy to sell a Mercedes. And he kind of looked at me and he's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah. So if I have those level of people, I wouldn't be pitching you. So many people are taking pitches and they have no idea what their actual ability is. They are not the person who can say yes, or worse, they tell you, yeah, make this real easy for me to sell. Make it something that you wouldn't come to me with. And then tell me you have that thing that there's no way you'd bring me, and then I can sell that. And it's like, well, yeah, so do you have all the money? No, you're a finance company. Oh, you don't have all the money. Okay, well, get all the money, get the people, and then bring this back, because I tell you, I think I can get this financed. I'm like, what are you talking about? If I have the money, you know, it's like the Steve Martin joke. It's like, you want to know how to get $1 million? First, get $1 million. Then... that's what happens in pitches.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Please tell me that woman was Amy Pascal.
Lovely woman.
So let's see what the audience has been saying. So nothing but praise tonight, Tom, for your
thank
stories.
you. It's been fun.
And for those watching that are thinking, why is Jeff so quiet? Like I said a few moments ago, I'm enjoying, I'm learning, I'm having a good time. So if anyone's like, oh, are you having a bad time, Jeff? Or is your attention elsewhere? No, I'm like you guys right now, and I'm invested in the show. So let's see, Ninja Lawyer Steve, message retracted, but I believe it was about his super chat was about my black ass, the meme on our podcast. So folks, if you want to know what the my black ass fun is, just come back and on Thursday night and you'll learn all about it. But thank you, Ninja Lawyer Steve. Tim Riggs says art is expression, one of the purest forms of it. If you want to control people's minds, control how they can express themselves. It's bloody evil.
Good point.
Thank you. This one makes me laugh big time, though. From Thanatos Felicitas, it says Mel Blanc was neither a duck nor a rabbit. Duck season.
That's a good point. I'm sure the duck lobby would have something to say. Well, you know, they're doing Looney Tunes now, but they're not allowing Elmer Fudd to have a gun.
Yeah.
Which is dumb, because if he's allowed to use his, I think it was a bladed weapon, that's way more gruesome than, you know.
My white male wage will not let me use a gun.
Yeah, kill the rabbit.
Too much white male wage.
And there's this whole little thing of, I don't know, he's a hunter, you know, hunting duck. I don't know, hunting rabbit. You know,
I'm hunting
to
rabbit.
me, it's sort of like, well, if you're going to do that, let's not do Looney Tunes again. Let's not crap on Looney Tunes. Come up with something that's non-gun related that's funny. Don't take something brilliant like Tex Avery's Looney Tunes and turn it into an abomination, because the fans won't like it.
No, I remember in the 90s when they were considering, after Mel Blanc had died, considering changing the voices because they all had speech impediments.
Oh, jeez.
It's like, no, you don't mess with that.
Yeah.
Are we going to go back and censor old kids' movies then, too, because the kids had speech impediments and the people thought it was cute to, you know, make your something sound like a W?
Oh, just wait. You know, you were talking about, you know, whatchamacallit, the Little Rascals. That's going to be the next one down the line. That's
yeah. And you just want to go, well, look, if you have so many fundamental problems with the metrics on Little Rascals, maybe we should just leave it alone. Just move on. There's 10 million other great ideas we can do.
The thing is about the Little Rascals, it's such an, I know it was an example, but like, you think about something like the Little Rascals and how, because of the sensibilities of 2020, it might get lost. You know, it might, it's offensive by today's standards, so we don't talk about it. We don't do anything with it. And people think, how could you lose a piece of art? How can you lose a movie? Look, movies have been lost to time. There's countless examples. Gaming, people think, video games are a forever medium. Because, you know, backwards compatibility and other things, games get lost in the ether too. So
you're right.
People out there that think like we discuss pieces of energy or these things in hyperbolic ways, it's like it happens in front of you. You guys just aren't aware of it. So these things can happen. And I wouldn't be surprised if a Little Rascals or a Three Stooges or something like that sadly gets wiped away because of, you know, this, whatever we're trying to do, this purity that we're looking for in 2020 that is not obtainable, because you mentioned fear earlier. A lot of the pushback is the people that have the guiltiest minds or the guiltiest consciences. You know, they have the most skeletons in their closet. They have to cover up for everybody and make these weird policy changes because we don't want to know what's going on in their private life, and they want to come off as the virtuous one. So,
yeah, often they have the person that looks behind the door is the person that would normally be standing behind the door. So yes, you're absolutely right.
It's scary, and it's an ugly world we live in.
Yeah, fear.
Mega Jetty 1 was chiming in earlier. He says the customer is not always right, not always wrong either. I agree with that. You know, you got to listen. You definitely have to listen.
Yeah.
But
well, that goes to my point of it's a dark and stormy night, and then what happened is not a storyteller's job. Your job is to tell a story, and sometimes the customer doesn't know what they want, but also you thumbing your nose at the customer, or if you've done something that didn't turn out, turning on them, turning on your audience, turning on the people that like you or love what you're doing makes absolutely no sense. Not only is it bad as an artist, but it's bad business.
Well, I think there's a difference there. Is not so much like now something like you normally do, Tom. That's your own voice. That's your own, you know, creation from top to bottom. I think the bigger difference is when you get something like Star Wars or Star Trek or Doctor Who or all these other, you know, franchises we keep bringing up, because it goes along with that one. Like, it's an expectation you have. You know, you go in, you sit down at a restaurant, you expect to order a steak, and you expect that steak to be cooked to your, you know, how you want it, and you've been there a million times, but this time they bring you a fish. We did a video just like this, you know, and they tell you, no, this fish is better for you. It's like, but I didn't fucking order the fish. I ordered the steak. And you're like, don't yell at me. It's like yell at the cook. They're the one who told me, you know, it's like, and they keep passing the buck along and they tell you, oh, you're a racist for not wanting to eat this fish.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you're fishist. You know, it's like,
No, that's a great analogy. It points out how absurd it is. And you're right. There's a reasonable expectation. If you're watching Doctor Who, you probably love the canon. You probably love the character. You love what they've established. So wrecking it for you is not an act of creativity. It's just an act of, you know, being petulant. I'm going to stir it up and destroy it all and ha 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 ha. And you're still going to have to like it because, you know, we outgrew you. You know, and the whole thing is like, well, no, I wanted to see what I paid for, what I'm asking to see, and I have every right to expect it. If I promised something to you and I don't deliver it, that's what's called a bad review. You know, a good reviewer goes, okay, maybe I don't love horror movies, but this movie said it's a horror movie. It delivered the things that a horror movie should do. It's a good movie. It may not even be your thing, but did the movie do what it promised to do? Did the movie do what you wanted it to do for you? If it did, it's a success.
that's a very good point. And I know we brought up Roger Ebert earlier in a kind of a negative connotation, but one positive thing he did, there's a lot of times where he'd give reviews and he'd be like, you know, this is not my thing, but like I remember Ninja Turtles, for example, was one. He's like, this is probably the best Ninja Turtle movie you're ever going to get.
Yep.
It's just like, you know, it's not my thing, but you know.
Exactly.
Right.
For people, I'm not judging, you know, I'm not judging. If people that love this are going to love it. It's a well-crafted thing. A lot of people worked hard on it. It may not be his thing, but he didn't say it was bad because it was not his thing.
No, and I don't even remember if he gave it thumbs up or not. I think he might have, but he's pretty critical of it because he's like, he only played the video game. He had no other idea what the Ninja Turtles were, you know. But not to go off the line, but no, I think that's the whole point is like in the word subversion of expectations, I think it's tossed around too much. And I think it was Cameron Pasha who brought up the great point where it's like, that shouldn't even be what you shoot for because subversion in and of itself is a bad thing. It's to trick, you know, it should be something like, you know, you want to surprise your audience. You want to take them on a ride with, you know, you want to keep, you know, like a magic trick.
My philosophy is exceed their expectations. And you can exceed them by being clever and unexpected. You can exceed them by doing better than what, you know, look at T2. It's like T2. I did better than the first Terminator. I exceeded your expectations for a movie like this. I didn't destroy my first movie by making my second one. I think instead of subverting expectations as a filmmaker, as an actor, I would say I strive, and I could fail, but I strive to exceed people's expectations.
I think a lot of that too, Tom from the podcast Main Proper, it's a lot of people just wanting to make excuses for Rian Johnson.
Oh yeah, well that's what we say is built-in excuses all the time, and the same thing with like, you know, people keep saying, you know, like you did earlier, and you keep bringing up with the whole sooner or later the money people are going to want to do something about this. But I think things we've learned from Tom and other people is that some of the money people are the ones who are pushing these agendas, and not only that, you have these Oscar rules and stuff that I feel like are like a fail-safe button to make sure that even if the money people were to start to grumble, that it's like, oh well, you still have to do this thing or you're a horrible person. And I think that's the other side of it we ignored is like, how fearful is Hollywood of being called out? I mean, we've seen like Gillette and certain other companies go to the extreme of losing all this money, even though they still like double down on their bullshit, you know, like the hill they picked to die on, like you were bringing up, Tom, earlier. Yeah. I mean, where is that point for Hollywood, do you think? I mean, I think Jeff kind of asked that question earlier, but I mean... Well,
it's a valid question. I don't think I adequately answered, Jeff, to be honest.
I have a theory on that I've been hearing about, you know, why these companies and stuff kind of, they basically get woke and go broke. What if they were broke beforehand and they do it just for marketing, just for traction, just for attention?
I think negative publicity can only get you so far. You raise a good point, though. They could be doing it to kind of shake the tree and see what falls. But like you said, it's get woke, go broke. I think people vote with their pocketbook. And at the end of the day, yeah, sure, you can come up with something that really screwed up, you know, the fans that love Star Trek. You really crapped all over it, and they all had to slow down. You know, it's like slowing down for an ambulance just to see what happened. But that's not sustainable, nor is it desirable. And I think... part of the reckoning that's going to happen in Hollywood is they're going to have to start realizing that there is a middle ground. There is an audience of people that tend to be more culturally in the middle, more culturally even conservative, or maybe a little progressive, and they don't want it all thrown in their face. They just want to be entertained. At the end of the day, they don't want to feel like the message of the film exceeded the storytelling or the character. And this kind of filmmaking right now, I'm sure a lot of people are scratching their head like, well, we're giving them what's, you know, good for them. We're giving them, we're blowing everything up here as far as what things used to be and now how they should be. Why aren't people buying? There must be something wrong with them. And I think eventually what's going to happen is they're going to go, well, maybe we're not making the kinds of things that universally appeal to the very people that made us rich, that made our company. And some of the companies that own the means of production are not in the movie business. I mean, we have a phone company owns Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And you know, those to them, it's a very small part of their business.
No, but that's a positive. I do see that as a bit of a positive. I know it kind of sounds funny at first, but if I think we kind of went down this road a little bit on our conversation before, Tom, but I see it as almost kind of like maybe this is the next step where we need to go, because if you go back to the late 60s and 70s where we had the revolution, then what it was the old Hollywood was dying out, and you had a bunch of beverage companies and other companies that had no idea how to make movies. They knew how to market stuff, and they knew all that kind of stuff, but they didn't know. So they go and they give, you know, like Dennis Hopper and, you know, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and Francis Ford Coppola and Brian De Palma a couple $1 million and go, here, kids, go make me a fucking movie. And and they'd come back and they'd bring them back, you know, like Easy Rider and The Godfather and so on and so forth, and Star Wars and well, American Graffiti first, but you know what I'm getting at, like yeah, it was like this whole revolution of this movie that took us into the 80s, and I hope that AT&T is a sign that that's where things are going, because I feel like even though there's some positive and negative things to go with the Snyder Cut, I think one of the positive things is that the AT&T is like, nope, this is what the fans want, give it to them, this is what they want. You know, like, and I feel like that's the right road. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I totally agree with you. I think if we get away from the idea that somehow we're toxic as fans of the work, or that we care about them, that we don't want to see it spray painted, I think money will, you know, the bottom line, as you say, AT&T will see, if we do things that are good, that the fans like, they will be loyal and enjoy our stuff. What a radical idea. And I think there will be a shift, because at the end of the day, they want to make money. And those of us like me, I just want to make art. I do it for free. And that's why you have an agent, because I'd be like, yes, great. I get to make a science fiction film. Oh, and I get paid. You know, my agent's like, listen, dude, slow down. You need to get paid to eat. You know, that money people know that. We would do it anyway. We would do it for free. And so there needs to be a balance of the audience needs to be re-included and listened to. We've been alienated over the last 10 years, and we're fed up with it. We want entertainment that everybody can enjoy, but that isn't spiteful of the very people it's intended for.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a great point. Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
Oh, we had a giant super chat from our friend Crispy Mofo that says, I have said it before and I will say it again. I am glad that Buck Rogers is still in litigation or whatever, but at least it hasn't been rebooted as Beth Rogers from
from the Karen century.
From the Karen century, exactly. And here's a crazy idea. You know, women loved Buck Rogers. I'm just going to say, doesn't need to be Beth Rogers. And I don't know. Here's a crazy idea. I've got original scripts with women characters in it that you could do that isn't Buck Rogers. That you could be, he's a flawed woman, you could do it. Why is that not even on the table? I would rather do that than piss all over the canon of Buck Rogers. There's no reason for it. There's no reason to revisit it.
Mecca's been a little quiet throughout the show, but she'll be the first to tell you, know, like I think she even said something about it earlier. Like, women do want to go see manly men.
We want to see men. We want to see men. We want it. We don't always need to see some chick flick, you know, representation, feelings, crying, relationship stuff. Sometimes women want to see an action movie because it's got a hot guy in it. Sometimes women prefer action movies. You know, you can't just generalize and stereotype all women as wanting the same thing, because we don't.
Terrific point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
there's a lot more. I'll tell you this. There's, not to be blunt, but there's probably more times I've gotten laid after watching a kick-ass action movie with some chick than I have some lovey-dovey movie where they're crying their fucking eyes out at the end, you know?
Of course, because the adrenaline's going. Women are humans. They are equal, are complement. They will enjoy it. They'll look at it. They'll be like, oh, he's hot. I love the action. I feel excited. And then it's go time after the movie. That is what a movie is supposed to do.
Same thing with horror. Great example, like your movie. I mean, that's what made slasher films so big in the 70s and 80s, is they were perfect for date movies.
Yes, women liked being scared just as much as men.
Well, and it's a good excuse to cuddle up too. Like even to pretend and to fake it, just you have an excuse to be like, "Oh, that's so scary. Hold me."
Exactly.
Cuddle
it's
together,
like riding a roller coaster.
And then speaking of strong women, I mean, most horror movies had a strong female lead. Yeah.
Yeah, The Final Girl is pretty much every horror movie, from Jamie Lee Curtis on to Heather Langenkamp to, pretty much all of them.
You're absolutely right. It was always a woman at the end who defeated the evil, and she was terrified.
Or a gay guy in the case of Nightmare on Elm Street too. But hey,
hey, he was the first male scream queen.
He admits it. He said, "Well, everybody has come out of the closet on that movie now. That's no secret on that one."
That's funny.
It's
but
hilarious.
she's right though too. A woman is no dummy, and if she's interested in a guy, she can snuggle up to him and let him protect her in the middle of a scary thing. And she's in the driver's seat. She's determining what happens, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with her wanting to see a film. And she never once goes, "Well, I would go see this film, but is it directed by a man?" It's like, no, I want to go out.
I just can't fathom watching that Jason Momoa for 2 hours without a t-shirt on.
Yes. How could he possibly have anything to say to me? Yeah.
It's like, I don't give a fuck what he's saying as long as he's got his shirt off. That's what she's thinking.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Wrong with that. Why? When did that become a bad thing?
Mecca's like, yeah, save some sharks. Just keep your shirt off.
Exactly. And we're humans. That's normal. That's how little humans get made. It's
the meaning of life right there is to hook up and procreate and make more life.
Thank you. I loved that. And we shouldn't get away from that. And what is it? The battle of the sexes can never be won because there's too much fraternizing with the enemy. It's like we shouldn't create an antagonistic environment between men and women, because you don't elevate women by pushing men down, and men shouldn't be pushing women down. They should be respecting them, letting them have opportunities, let them do their thing and shine. But by the same token, we're creating this sort of artificial antagonism between them, pretending we're not sexually attracted, pretending there isn't things that women are better at, things that men might be better at. There's crossover. You can't, as Mecca was saying, you can't generalize a woman. Some of the sexiest women in the world want to sit down and watch Hunt for Red October. Who would dismiss that out of hand?
Crazy
people that don't want to get laid, evidently, because just like Sean Connery said, no, never mind. Go ahead.
Don't men want women to watch their stuff with them, because then they're like, oh, you are actually interested in something I'm interested in? That makes them feel special and important when a woman is interested. I mean, and that's part of how you have common ground with people, is to be interested in things that they're also interested in. So to keep separating, only women can watch this, only people of this ethnic group can do that. It's like, seriously, stop. We want as many people to be on board with these things.
I don't feel represented. There's not enough fat white dudes on TV.
Now, Mecca, you raise a really good point in that with a relationship like that, it's less important for you to find the right person, but rather you become the right person for that other person. You take an interest in them. If she took an interest in me, I would be inclined, it's not 50-50, it's 100-100. It's like, if she's interested in something and I make the effort and I step up and I'm like, hey, I'm going to learn about this. This is something that's important. If she reciprocates, there's an attraction there, but also she's making an effort to be the right person for me and I'm making an effort to be the right person for her. That is supposed to be the dynamic. That's true equality, because you're making an effort for the other person. It's not just narcissism of, you need to be right for me and this is my laundry list of the way you need to be. It's like, no, I really dig you and I'm going to find out what you're into, and then I'm going to put myself where I become the right person for you. And if both people are doing it, then you have true equality.
That's an excellent point.
Thank
I
you.
didn't have a follow-up to that one, honestly.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
I mean, we don't want to take up too much more of your time because I know we've had you for so long now, and I know
I'm enjoying it. Thank you.
Okay,
for
good.
having me
As
on.
long as you're good, I know we got a few more super chats and stuff to get through too.
You'll laugh because I'm actually leaving this to go and edit on a movie. I'm going over to a buddy of mine's place, and we're doing color correction and some visual effects tonight. So after I do this meeting, I'll probably be working till 2 a.m. on. It's this little science fiction film that I'm laying out the stuff right now in DaVinci to color correct.
I actually know the feeling, dude. In some days it's a blessing, and some days it's a curse. I don't get to edit movies. I wish I could someday. Someday I might, but
yeah. Well, a bad day doing this is better than a good day working at the tire company.
Absolutely. Like that's the way I try to look at it too, and I think we all try to. And that's why I try to look at it with Hollywood, and that's where I get sick and tired of the entitlement bullshit they have, and where they feel like they can tell us how to live. And just to kind of sum up everything we've talked about here, I think it's real sickening just to see the whole like Imagine videos, the I take responsibility shit.
Cool.
You think if that's a lot of what that is, Tom, is they're just going batshit crazy because nobody's paying attention to them? They're irrelevant for the most part. If you're somebody who's a huge movie star right now,
that's an interesting way of putting it. Is yes, they probably are spinning their wheels because their currency is being considered relevant. It's being needed. In the Great Depression in the 1930s, movies got people through tough times, but it was a very different conversation. It was very different. The price point was different. You could go see 10 movies in a week or whatever. They're pumping them out and making people forget about it. Right now we're shut down completely, and we've got some streaming. I think some of it is stamping your feet and kind of going, I'm relevant and I'm important and I got to justify that I make millions of dollars. I have to have an opinion. But how lucky we are that we have the fandom menace. We have the technology that our ideas can get out. We're lucky to have the people that are in the chat, or the people that will watch this later, or the people that donate to this program, because we all have a voice. We're all part of the dialogue, where we would have been anonymous back then. We would have been just the masses. And now we do have a voice. And I think the more articulate we are about what we're looking for, they're going to have to pay attention, because we're the people that consume. We're the people that enjoy and collect. And these things have emotional meaning to me and to all of us. It's like you're making things for us. Don't forget that.
Absolutely. And I think that's the best point of the night so far, is that disconnection right there, where they feel like their opinion means so much more than ours. When I feel like that's the biggest, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, misconception on the part of
presumption.
Or presumption, maybe, on the part of the bubble. Because I mean, that's the best part, is we get people like you, Tom, and there's been a lot of other, including people like Nick Myers, have talked to me and others, where it feels like they're on a little bit more of the outside, and they're looking in, kind of seeing this craziness happen. And it's a breath of fresh air to know that there's some people out there who are not crazy. And I got to give Script Doctor credit, because I said, on a podcast, I said once, it's like nobody has common sense anymore. It's like, yeah, it's more like super sense now. So we're always happy to have somebody with super sense on the show like you, Tom.
Thank you. And thank you to Heathen Bushcraft for that comment. I really appreciate it. Yes, you know what? We are out here. We are behind some of the gates, and we're struggling. We're knocking on the door. I don't have it any easier or harder than anybody else, but I do have a lot I want to say, a lot I want to make, and we are out here. We are among the most passionate people here. We just want to make stuff that we want to enjoy. I want to see. If somebody turned around and said, "Tom, do you want to do a Star Trek?" I actually have one that I would love to do that fits perfectly into it. If somebody said to me, go make a genre film, I would make a genre film that would just be the best kick-ass genre film I could. And I wouldn't once go, oh, I need to fill this brief. I need to do this thing. And we're out here. We're just what's now considered indie. We're considered outliers, and we just keep knocking on the door, and we're looking for financing more than we're making movies. And that's the reality.
And that's the best part, is I think we just want people who want to tell good stories, right, Jeff?
Oh God, that's all I want out of entertainment. And just for, Tom, just to let you know, too, we have an open door policy on the channel. So anytime you'd like to come back, like I said, I've been quiet because I've been enjoying everything, and the audience has been loving it, too. So, obviously you have a schedule and you're busy and stuff, but, maybe before the year's over, if we can try to get back in contact or something like that, I think it'd be a really fun show.
After the movie drops, maybe we can have a chat and talk a little bit more. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you to the three of you and all these great comments. I'd love to be on again, and there's so much more we can talk about, and really, we're all part of the end users, myself included. I got into this because I feel just like you guys. I love this stuff. It breaks my heart when I see it crapped on, but more importantly, I think there's a path out of this. Once the world comes back, we don't have to keep doing it that way. We can do a better job of having a dialogue with the people that enjoy this, and there's got to be a better way to create this where it isn't simply a corporate cog manufactured, that these are made by passionate people, and they just happen to make money because they're well crafted and they find an audience.
Absolutely. So, Jeff, what do we got left for super chats? Or we should probably get through them.
Yes, we will read these. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight and everyone who sent them in. Let's read them. So first off, Jack White says, "Is this stupid thing?" Sorry, it's the stupid thing we have with these kids born in '95 and after, letting these stupid arbitrary characteristics like skin color define them. Like my younger brother, for example, he says the reason he goes to gay bars is because he feels like he needs a safe space from straight people. Now, folks, Jack White is not a troll. He's a legit dude. So just letting you guys know, he's it's a serious question here. And I'd like to say, Jack, as somebody, I don't want to use it that way because I don't like it, but I don't like the skin color defined shit. I grew up, with the background that I have, and I hate that I have to be the whatever. Like, I know Quarter Black Garrett takes it and runs with it, and I run with it too and stuff. But at the end of the day, I want to be defined by who I am as a person, not my skin color.
Wait,
but
you're not white?
I'm not white, surprisingly. I know, right?
You surprise me with this every damn time, Jeff. I told you got to warn me first.
Honestly, I'm so pale in comparison. I'm as white as any white person, unless you're really trying to figure shit out.
Dude, honestly, I never think about it until you bring it up.
I know you don't. I know how it is. But no, Jack, I'm with you, man. It's a younger thing. Hopefully, we just move past it. I mean, I'm not.
I think, it's like, it used to be like everybody wanted to be included and more inclusive and not be recognized as a gay person or a handicapped person or a black person. They just want to be a person. And now it's like, recognize my label or I'm going to freak the fuck out. It's right. Crazy.
Hopefully where it comes from will have less authority and more just the content of the person's ideas, their character, what they're doing. That will have the enforcement of their idea. That will give power to them. I think, to be ironic, to be truly progressive, to be truly diverse, we've got to have ideas that we disagree with, including ideas that are more traditional, whatever, about storytelling, about anything. Include all of it. But eventually, to be really progressive, we do need to be beyond who you are as a person being the only thing that defines you or defines your art or what you do. I dream of a time where I could be hired as a white dude by a guy who's an Asian filmmaker who just wants to make a cool film noir. And he goes, "Tom, you're the right guy for it." And I just don't, it doesn't even cross my mind. It's like, well, should I do a film noir with an Asian guy? It's like, that's ridiculous. I went to go see Bruce Lee when I was a kid. I didn't once go, I would have loved this if only Clint Eastwood was in this, It's absurd. It's absurd.
No, I go the other racist direction. I'd be like, can you do karate? And then if he said yes, I'd be sitting there thinking, film noir with karate.
Oh, right. I would be so there.
See, that's how inspiration comes from. Racism. No, I'm just kidding.
I have a movie that does incorporate film noir and karate. And I want to try and talk to a friend of mine who directs Scott Adkins and a lot of stuff. I wanted to get Scott in it and kind of have it be a neo-noir, but it has a martial arts component, which is really cool. So I'd love to mash up something like that. I think that would be a lot of fun. But again, you don't even think about like, oh, well, wait, is that Asian cinema or is this or that? It's like, no, I just want to do a cool movie. And hopefully we progress to that quick, you know, where I don't even, I mean, when I came on here, I didn't know anything about any of you when I first started, and I didn't once stop and think, oh, okay, this guy's a white guy and this guy's this, and it's like, no, we're just talking. We all have valid opinions. We should be able to express our ideas about anything. If you want to write a thing about a black guy in a wheelchair, go for it. Make it amazing. You know, just do it. You know.
By the way, there's a lot of love for a kung fu detective in the chat.
Yeah, I'm feeling that. I actually do have a movie, which is very funny. I have a package.
I didn't mean to derail you there, but I was just going to say you might want to take a note of that.
It's noted in my pitch.
Just give me a thing. That's all I want.
I have a COVID friendly. It's a COVID friendly movie. You could shoot it. You could shoot it now. So yeah, maybe I will.
Let's see. Shaolin Wright says, I'm a Star Wars normie and we are deep. Jeff, we aren't the Fandom Menace, though. Can you call us normies who love Star Wars the General Republic? Sure. I'm going to take a picture of that right now. I think it's a great phrase. And yeah, I know normie has a pejorative nature to it, and you don't want that. So there we go. Fine. So Star Wars normies from here on out are called the General Republic. And folks, if you could remind me if I slip, I actually like the phrase. I don't feel like I need to be self-policing. I just want to use the phrase. I think it's a cool phrase. So thank you, Shaolin Wright. Put it on a t-shirt one day, the General Republic. Jeffrey Turner, aka Mega Jetty 1, says the only issue with Wonder Woman is the end. The Ares battle is messy. Yeah, the end of Wonder Woman kind of sucks.
Like, I'm not a huge fan of Wonder Woman. I like the first part, and then it falls apart.
Yeah, I like the World War II trenches stuff is amazing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, and whenever you get into a CG fest, you know, the problem is physics. I deal with this all the time with giving weight to objects, and if you get bigger and bigger and bigger, you get less personal. I think a more intimate, an intimate fight like you'd see in the show Barry, between Barry and one guy in a living room, can feel more brutal and more emotional and more at stake than throwing buildings around. You know, it's all how you shoot it.
Absolutely. Yeah. What else we got on deck, Jeff?
Okay, so up next, we have our friend Jack White, who says, people like Kathleen Kennedy and Ryan Johnson and Marvel under Sana Amanat are not interested in entertaining people. They want to lecture and talk down to. Jack, you're speaking the truth to us, man. Like, that's how I look at it. As a comics fan, to be lectured, there's a difference between having a Denny O'Neil story or an old EC comic, preachy as they call it, that it's weird. A story from 1956, whenever the last EC science fiction story came out about the racial allegory between the blue robots and the red robots and all that stuff. And I don't want to tell you the twist ending, folks. It's a really fantastic story. But that's the last time.
Robot?
Yeah, it's close to it, dude. But that's the last era where that and maybe early Stan Lee stuff is where you get socially conscious issues in books that don't feel stupid or again, preachy is the word I'll use to describe it. There, you can put that kind of good commentary in there, but it's got to be good. It's got to be, you can't get into that stuff where it's just messy. Like
we got Quarter Black Garrett in the chat. How we doing, sir?
Hey, what up, man? Thanks for coming on last week, dude.
Awesome,
our friend Leg, yeah, awesome. I was shooting him a message to make sure we're following each other on Twitter. Leg Kick One says, "Did you guys see
he wanted to remind you about that drinking movie watch party too."
Was it Ninja Turtles he wanted to be on?
Yeah.
Garrett, since you're in the chat, I will make sure that we can do it with you involved. Because, like I said, some of the guys
reminded him
are a big fan of you as well, so it'll be a very fun stream. So, folks, just keep on checking in for all of our live streams.
Sorry, I just had to remind you, and he reminded me to remind you. So yeah.
Hey, I'm glad that he reminded you to remind me, and that I've been reminded officially on air. That's important because believe me, people know sometimes I forget shit.
We have it on record.
Yeah, I want to do it. Let's see. Leg Kick One says, "Did you guys see the Marvel 616 trailer? Thoughts?" I have not. Have you guys?
I have not. When did that drop?
Probably today. So, Leg Kick One, if you want to ask me again on Thursday, I will make sure I do my best taking a picture of that to check it out so we can talk about it on the podcast. Space Monkey 0899, thank you very much. He says, "Hail the High Council." Well, thank you very much, Space Monkey 0899. Glad to see you here tonight again. Canadian Spider-Man says, "How has SJW culture grown despite South Park?" South Park has not, in my opinion, has not really fallen off in any way, but I think there's just too much for one South Park to deal with.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I think we need 10 South Parks. We need us to, and I don't mean like World Class Bullshitters only, but we need the Fandom Menace people to speak out and to do all this stuff.
I'm already Cartman, so.
Do you like pot pies? Do you hate your cat?
I like pot pies. I do hate my cat. Oh my God, I am Cartman. I'm racist.
Monster 01. Yeah, we're doing TMNT stuff. Look at this portion of the Fandom Menace. We love Star Wars. We love all the geek culture stuff, but there's stuff that people aren't, talking about, and we want to talk about it. If there was down the road, I want to do a drunk Power Rangers the movie watch party, like all kinds of shit. Like that's just fun stuff because we're all living in the same world and it kind of blows right now. So we'll keep you guys up to date on any of the on every update. So just keep watching. Now, Legalize Adulthood. Thank you very much. He said I just came in here randomly but this conversation is very interesting. Thank you very much, Legalize Adulthood. Barney the Spaceosaurus woke reek says bad news. The success of Enola Holmes on Netflix has caused them to want to make 5 sequels. Also, there's a prequel to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest called Ratchet, also very successful.
Now, the Ratchet thing, I will say this about that. I have not seen it. I've heard good and bad about it. But at least the one good thing I've heard about it is I was afraid they would turn around and make it, it's some white man is the reason she's such a bitch. That's not the case, I guess. So for better or worse, at least that's a good thing. But the Enola Holmes thing is just a fucking.
Yeah, I have no interest in that one at all.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
I will say Nurse Ratched, in my opinion, is the greatest movie villain, even over Darth Vader and all that stuff, because she's realistic. That ending to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest hurts every time. So
it's personal as shit.
Yeah,
I love that movie.
I do too. Tim Riggs says the Oscar rule devalues the Best Picture even more. Now it's going to be you only won because you qualified for this nomination under those rules.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly. Anytime you quantify art, you're in deep trouble.
Yep. Going back to the whole thing real quick about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, that was funny because I told my dad, I'm like, I talked to Brad Dourif. He's like, who? I'm like, the guy with the stutter in Cuckoo's Nest. That's the only thing he'd know him from. He doesn't know him as Chucky or anything else.
He doesn't know him from Lord of the Rings?
No, he's never watched He wouldn't watch Lord of the You'd have to pay him and then some to watch shit like Lord of the Rings. He wouldn't sit through that. My dad, if it's got Clint Eastwood or John Wayne in it, maybe. That's my dad.
I mean, Clint Eastwood's the man, so I can't really fight you on that one.
Old school.
Yeah, that's about it.
Our friend Adam Wofford says, so the coming up Oscars, the movie that has black, trans, non-gender fluid cast wins the Best Picture, but no one saw it. But this crazy movie clown werewolf love story made $2 billion.
Go figure.
The disconnect is going to be there forever, Adam. Just straight up. And I think you said it earlier, Tom. People just aren't going to try like you. You're not going to try to win the Oscar.
No.
So
there's not even going to be the pretense because I don't want to be a member of a club that wouldn't have me as a member.
That sounds like me.
Our friend Crispy Mofo with a giant super chat. We read it earlier, but I'll read it again. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm glad Buck Rogers is still in litigation or whatever, but at least it hasn't been rebooted as Beth Rogers from the Karen Century. Thank you, Crispy Mofo, for that. But he did follow up and says, dang, this has been a really good confab. A lot of love and support tonight, folks. You guys keep showing the support like this, telling us what you want. We'll do it. We were jokingly once referred to as the People's Republic of Pop Culture. Like, we're all about giving you guys what you want. So just tell us what you want. We'll gladly do it. You guys want compelling arguments and conversations about entertainment? Well, we got a screenwriter, an actor, a voice actor, everything all in one with Tom tonight. And we had one of the best reasons why pop culture has shit the bed the way it has. So, I mean, this is going to be that episode of the High Council that people can go back and say, did they finally pinpoint the question they were trying to have answered for years? Yes, we did. So I'm glad you guys are enjoying it.
And I just shared Tom's YouTube channel in the chat there. So if you guys want to hop on over there and subscribe and check it out, there you go.
Please do. I'm going to be updating with new stuff from the movies, and you can see old sketches and some of the trailers from some of the films. And I'd love to hear from some of you. That would be fantastic.
And Tom, anytime you need, if you want to talk, to promote your horror stuff, I have some other filmmaker friends that have things. So anything we can do to help get the eyes on the project, just let me know.
Thank you. That would be terrific. I'll take you up on that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we got a nice little network here. It's awesome.
What I'm going to do is I'm just going to straight up, I'm going to have Tom give you my email address, and then we'll talk that way because Like
Yeah,
I said, my
perfect.
buddy Nick has made a couple horror films and stuff too, and so it's just a fun community to be a part of.
Oh, absolutely. Shoot it my way, and we'll keep in touch.
I think
yes.
you've got a lot of new fans tonight. Just so.
Oh
you know.
God, yeah, you do, man.
Thank you for having me. This has been a great talk. I
Thank you for
appreciate
coming,
talking with the
man.
three of you. Yeah.
Now we do have four more super chats. 3 come from Uncultured Barbarian. He says, "Hi, room. I was pleasantly surprised to receive my Earthworm Jim and Bigfoot Bill hardcover comics today. Going to be a great day tomorrow." Now, Uncultured Barbarian, if you love comics, you're going to have a great day. If you're a backer of Stealing Solo, by the way, folks, we've been getting reports across the country that the replacement books have been coming out and everyone's been happy. So we've gone to I won't tell you where we went because they publish one of the big two's books, but we have, replace all of those books and keep your eyes open on your mailboxes. It's very exciting. And for all the people that keep asking me, is there more coming? Of course there's more coming. Can't keep a good man down. Yes, I just called myself good in front of people. Screw it. Anyway, though, Uncultured Barbarian says, pretty sad that Marvel and DC are doing to comics what Susan Smith and Casey Anthony did to their children. Ouch. That's mean, but
Tsunami? Yeah.
Look, they're hurting their IPs. Okay, you're not wrong. Okay, you're definitely not wrong. Spider-Man has little value to me these days, and he's one of the inspirations of why I want to do what I do. Uncultured Barbarian also says, "Can we get a movie with Terminegro teaming up with Kung Fu Detective in the '70s? It would be a license to print money."
Jesus Christ!
Well,
Tom begins typing.
Yeah. We Terminegro is a running joke on our channel about a time traveling black dude. So anytime you want to talk about that, we're a font of ideas.
Can we blow their minds and have me do the voice?
Of course.
Yeah, exactly.
That
would be great.
Project.
That would be
And
great.
then, finally, Tim Riggs, thank you very much. He says, waiting on that 40K stream with Arc, sorry. You won't have to wait super, super long. I'm trying to work that out for October to balance that with Schlocktoberfest and all that stuff. So I want to have that with Arch Warhammer and Nick Ricada try to do this like super mega awesome stream. And that's really about it for tonight. So, Tom, briefly, where can everyone find you again?
Hit me up on Twitter at Tom Conkle. You can take a look at one of the films at troubleismy.biz, B-I-Z, so it's troubleismy.biz. Also, you were kind enough to put the link to my YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe and hit me up with some comments, and hopefully we can have some more conversations and be looking for this movie coming out on October 29th.
Ooh, so close to my favorite holiday.
Yes, indeed.
Now, folks, you can find me on the after show from the High Council here. The link is in the chat over on Mindless Entertainment, so make sure you guys are subscribed to that. But before you come over there, let's find out where we can get Mecha Random, where we can find her on the internet.
My channel, Mecha Random 42, over on YouTube. I have Twitter. It is at Random Monkey, MNKY. I have, what else? Oh, I just signed up for an Instagram. I don't know how to use it yet, but I did sign up for one. And I have Twitch, which I did change my name over on Twitch to Mecha Random 42, so should be easier to find
You
over
sound
there.
like me. I don't know how to use that shit either.
I know.
I did share a lot of your stuff already, Tom, but okay, I got the rest of it here. Okay,
Thank you
cool.
so much. I appreciate it.
Now, Tom Connors, where can we find you all over the internet?
If I'm not crying under my desk, I'm here, there, everywhere. Midnight's Edge After Dark. I even crop up on the Friday Night Tights once in a while. Yeah, I do stuff.
You do stuff. That's a good way to describe what we do. Stuff. Tim Riggs did send in one final super chat. He says, Tom K, you were a revelation, my man. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tim.
Absolutely, man. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Oh,
yeah,
definitely.
It's been a good talk. I really enjoyed it, and I love the response. And let's do this again.
Oh, definitely. And folks, if you want more of this kind of stuff, spread the word too. Share this tonight. If you're thinking to yourself, I have one follower online, no one cares. Actually, YouTube cares the most because we talk about this magical, mystical algorithm. Well, that's one way you can help us beat that is just spread the word. They see how many people are sharing it. If you want more stuff like this, if you want to help change entertainment, that's how you guys do it. Just do your part, share it, and help us continue all to grow. And since Mecha brought it up, you can find us on Twitch as well, WCBS Gaming. We're trying to get to the monetized level. We have enough of the followers now, so all we have to do is figure out exactly what we need to do, and they'll be watching Twitch streams this holiday season, Dead by Daylight with all the bullshitters, and a bunch of other stuff as well. So I'm going to go over to Mindless Entertainment right now. Follow the link. Press 1 in the chat if we're waiting. And let's have a hell of a time. Jesse, what are we talking about over there tonight? Yes, we're talking about everything. So from all of us here on the High Council, thank you for watching. Come back on Thursday for a big video from World Class Bullshitters all about China and Disney. It's kind of depressing, but then again, it's Disney, so what do you expect? And always do the one thing I ask, folks. Tom, since you're on the show every week, what is the one thing I ask everyone?
Be excellent to each other.
And party on, dudes.